Chapter 119. Yan Feilwan was in the early stage of LV8. Xianxia was also in the early stage of LV8, but he was defeated by Yi Xing with one punch. Therefore, Yan Feilwan admitted defeat without hesitation. Yi Xing entered the top 5 without drawing blood. Now, the top 5 were all announced. Ren Xiuwu, Bu Haoling, Wei Qingxian, Li Pengfei, and Yi Xing. Among them, Ren Xiuwu was at the peak of the 8th level. Bu Haoling and Li Pengfei were at the middle of the 8th level. Wei Qingxian and Yi Xing were both at the 7th level. The former was at the peak of the 7th level and the latter was at the middle of the 7th level. Among the top 5, there were actually 2 7th level grandmasters. This result was probably something that no one had expected. Before the assessment, who would have thought that Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian, 2 7th layer grandmasters, would be able to make it to the top 5 when even a mid-8th layer grandmaster was eliminated? Moreover, one of them had already declared that he would take the first place and received the support of most students. This change was unexpected. In the 4th round, 3 out of 5 would advance. One of the remaining 4 would fight against each other. The winner would advance and the loser would be eliminated. After the Academy's research, Ren Xiuwu, who was in the peak of LV8, would have a bye in the 4th round. As the student with the highest cultivation in the advanced class, Ren Xiuwu's strength was naturally not weak. His bye was expected. As for the remaining 4 battles, many people were surprised. The Academy did not arrange for Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian, who were in the 7th stage, to fight against each other. Instead, they each fought against a middle stage of LV8. In the 1st round, Bu Haoling would fight against Wei Qingxian. In the 2nd round, Li Pengfei would fight against Yi Xing. In the last round, Chou Tianda, who was in the middle stage of LV8, was defeated by Wei Qingxian with one punch. Therefore, the outcome of the first battle was already expected. The students were looking forward to the battle between Li Pengfei and Yi Xing. Everyone wanted to know if Yi Xing could defeat a LV8 mid-stage grandmaster like Wei Qingxian. If that was the case, the battle for the top 3 would be extremely exciting and full of suspense. The first battle ended quickly. Wei Qingxian was indeed much stronger than a mid-8th level grandmaster. Even though Bu Haoling didn't fight Wei Qingxian head-on, he was defeated by Wei Qingxian within a few moves. Wei Qingxian entered the top 3. Bu Haoling sighed in his heart after being eliminated. He felt that he was unlucky. His opponent was Wei Qingxian, but Li Pengfei's luck was much better than his. Yi Xing's battle prowess was clearly much weaker than Wei Qingxuan's. He was in the middle stage of the 8th stage, so he could definitely fight with Wei Qingxian. He had a high chance of winning, and if he won, he could enter the top 3. Senior brother Yi, you can do it. Senior Li, defeat him. When Yi Xing and Li Pengfei walked into the arena, the scene suddenly became lively. The freshmen naturally stood on Yi Xing's side, hoping that Yi Xing could win this battle. After all, Yi Xing was a true freshman in name, and Wei Qingxian was already a student of the advanced class. Only if Yi Xing defeated the genius of the advanced class would the freshmen feel the greatest sense of honor. The advanced class students, without a doubt, all stood on Li Pengfei's side. Wei Qingxian defeating the genius of the advanced class was one thing, because although she was a new student, she was still a student of the advanced class. On the other hand, Yi Xing was a true freshman of the ordinary class. The students of the advanced class were absolutely unwilling to see a new student of the ordinary class step on their heads, no matter how outstanding this new student was. Xianxia's defeat, Yan Feilwan's admission of defeat, and Yi Xing's advancement into the top 5 had already made the students of the advanced class very unhappy. They felt that they had lost face, so naturally, they were now united against a common enemy. They all hoped that Li Pengfei would be able to eliminate Yi Xing otherwise. With Yi Xing, a new student, in the advanced class's assessment, the older students would feel very uncomfortable, sullen, and ashamed. Brat, you're just a new student who's only been here for 3 months, yet you're here to participate in the seniors' assessment. Are you trying to bully our advanced class? Li Pengfei was just like his surname. His expression was cold and stern, giving people a feeling of callousness. He coldly stared at Yi Xing and said, "You stop at the top 5. Yi Xing smiled and imitated Wei Qingxuan's tone. Top 5? I still want to take first place? Listening to this sentence, which was almost exactly the same as what Wei Qingxian had said before, and in the same tone, all the new students naturally laughed, and their confidence in Yi Xing increased a lot. All the students of the advanced class were stunned and felt that something was wrong. Wei Qingxian, who was among the students of the advanced class, smiled slightly when she heard this, and the corners of her mouth curled up. At this moment, Ren Xiuwu's face became gloomy. Another person had threatened to take first place, and he was also a 7th-level master. In his opinion, this person did not put him, a peak 8th-level master, in his eyes at all. He could not help but snort coldly. Li Pengfei was not as broad-minded as Chou Tianda. Even Chou Tianda was unhappy when he heard Wei Qingxuan's words, and Li Pengfei was even more furious. Arrogant. Li Pengfei shouted coldly. Don't think that you can be arrogant and conceited just because you have the strength to challenge those of a higher level. I'll let you know the gap between you and me now. As soon as his voice fell, Li Pengfei's figure flashed, and in an instant, he turned into a phantom and disappeared. Among the students, except for a few who could roughly see Li Pengfei's figure, most of the students lost track of Li Pengfei at this moment. They could not even see where he was, so how could they fight? After half a blink of an eye, Li Pengfei appeared. He was like a rock spreading its wings, appearing in the air behind Yi Xing. His palms stretched out and turned into sharp claws. The sharp claws stretched out as fast as lightning, aiming to grab Yi Xing's head. Upper grade body movement, rock steps. Upper grade martial technique, rock king's claws. They were both upper grade martial arts, and they were even a set of martial arts. If they were used at the same time, their power would be even greater. If this claw were to hit Yi Xing's head, 5 holes would be clawed out. Yi Xing seemed to be unaware of Li Pengfei's sudden appearance in the air behind him. His body did not dodge in the slightest. Li Pengfei's Rock King Claw was like a spark from a flint, grabbing the top of Yi Xing's head. The internal strength claw that penetrated his body had already grabbed Yi Xing's head. However, Yi Xing's head seemed to be especially sturdy, and the claw did not cause any damage. But a real claw was much stronger than the claw's attack power. If one was to be caught, the consequences would be extremely serious. His senior brother Yi. At this moment, the faces of the freshmen changed greatly. Some people sucked in a breath of cold air, and some people cried out in alarm. Some of the advanced class students, who longed for Yi Xing to be defeated, sneered at this moment. Li Pengfei also sneered in his heart. His speed was unparalleled. As expected, Yi Xing could not react in time. Thinking of Yi Xing's heavy injury to Xianxia, he did not show any mercy. The strength of this claw did not decrease in the slightest. He wanted to claw out 5 holes on Yi Xing's head and heavily injure him. However, just when he thought that he was 100% sure that he would grab Yi Xing's head, Yi Xing seemed to have grown eyes at the back of his head. His head suddenly tilted to the side, avoiding this claw that he was almost certain would succeed. At the same time, Yi Xing's shoulder pushed upwards, and his body leaned backwards. Yi Xing's dodge surprised Li Pengfei, but it did not arouse his vigilance. His Rock King's claw just happened to grab the shoulder that was pushed upwards. He thought to himself, "That's good. If I grab your head, I might accidentally kill you. I'll grab your shoulder, crush your bones, and cripple your arm. Not only will it not harm your life, but it will also teach you a lesson for your arrogance. It can also be considered as revenge for Xianxia." Li Pengfei began to sneer in his heart, but suddenly there was a miserable cry. His claw accurately grabbed Yi Xing's shoulder. However, the bones on Yi Xing's shoulder were not broken. What was broken were his finger bones. Yi Xing's shoulder was as solid as a piece of steel. Moreover, the strength of that strike was extremely terrifying. When Li Pengfei's claw grabbed it, the strong collided with the strong. The difference in the hardness of the body was obvious. Yi Xing's upper-grade body refining technique, silver body technique, had been cultivated to perfection. The hardness of his body was much higher than Chou Tianda's. Body collision? Even if Chou Tianda collided with him, his bones would be broken, let alone Li Pengfei. However, the shattering of Li Pengfei's finger bones was just the beginning. While he was screaming, Yixing's body leaned back and just happened to lean in front of him. Li Pengfei only felt that he was hit by a mountain. His miserable cries suddenly turned into a scream. This collision broke countless bones in his body. His body was instantly knocked back more than 10 feet and fell to the ground far away. He could no longer get up and kept screaming. Yixing's principle had always been that if someone respected him, he would return the favor tenfold. If someone offended him, he would return the favor tenfold. If Li Pengfei was afraid of hurting Yixing when he grabbed at Yixing's head and restrained his strength, then Yixing would definitely not be so ruthless to him. However, Li Pengfei did not care about Yixing's life. If that claw had hit Yixing's head, it would have made 5 holes. Yixing would have been seriously injured, or even killed because the head was an absolutely vital area. Since Li Pengfei didn't even care about Yixing's life, why should Yixing care about his life or death? Yixing's sturdy body collided with Li Pengfei's without restraint. Naturally, Li Pengfei was in an incomparably miserable state. Of course, in the end, Yixing still cared about Li Pengfei's life. This collision did not hit his vital parts. If he had deliberately hit his vital parts, this would definitely have taken Li Pengfei's life. It was completely possible to make his heart burst in an instant. After all, this was the Academy's assessment. Although the other party did not care about his life, Yixing still could not deliberately take the other party's life. Looking at Li Pengfei's figure that was sent flying, at this moment, the whole place was silent. All the students were stunned. Seeing that Yixing was about to be seriously injured by Li Pengfei's claw, they never thought that at that critical moment, the result would actually be such a reversal. The person who was seriously injured was not Yixing, but Li Pengfei. This result was simply unimaginable. Even now, when they recalled the scene of Li Pengfei's claw grabbing at Yixing's head, the students could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Of course, they were even more shocked. How calm and how good of a judgment did one have to be able to not panic under that kind of situation, and to be able to make an accurate counterattack? What kind of brain could be so calm and have such frightening judgment? They did not dare to imagine. Last 2.5 hours, the double monthly votes are about to end. Brothers, hurry up and vote if you have the monthly votes. Chapter 120. Looks like my luck is pretty good. Bu Haolang murmured, rubbing his nose as he looked at Li Pengfei, who was groaning on the ground. Previously, he had thought that encountering Wei Qingxian was just bad luck. Instead, he envied Li Pengfei's good luck. Now, he knew that he was lucky. Of course, only Bu Haolang thought that he was lucky. He only saw Li Pengfei being beaten up badly by Yixing. He didn't understand why Li Pengfei was beaten up so badly by Yixing. If Li Pengfei treated Yixing the way Bu Haolang treated Wei Qingxian, even if he lost, he wouldn't have ended up like this. This kid is not ordinary. A martial saint teacher from Ziyang College narrowed his eyes and said, Shigaoji, so what if he's not ordinary? Even if he's a martial saint destiny genius, he can only die after offending young Master Zhen. Another martial saint teacher from Ziyang College said calmly, his eyes sharp. That's true. Mayanji, who do you think will get first place? Shigaoji asked. Who cares who gets first place? What does that have to do with me? Mayanji smiled disdainfully, but he still spoke his own judgment. It's extremely difficult for a 7th level to challenge an 8th level. Yixing and Wei Qingxian were able to defeat an 8th level middle stage. I don't believe that they can defeat someone at the peak of the 8th level. Ma Yuanji naturally meant that Ren Xiuwu, who was at the peak of the 8th level, would get first place. Shigaoji smiled and said, I'm a person who believes in miracles. I think Ren Xiuwu definitely won't be able to get first place. Between Yixing and Wei Qingxian, at least one of them will defeat him, or even both of them. TSK. Ma Yuanji smiled disdainfully. Yixing, Wei Qingxian, and Ren Xiuwu naturally didn't know what the 2 martial saints from Ziyang College thought. After the 4th round ended, they quickly began the 5th round. The 5th round was the last round. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place would be decided directly. There would be 2 battles for the time being. In the previous round, Ren Xiuwu had a bye, so he had the greatest advantage. In this round, he would naturally be at a disadvantage. He would have to fight in the first 2 battles arranged by the academy. The first match was between Ren Xiuwu and Wei Qingxian. The second match was between Ren Xiuwu and Yi Xing. If Ren Xiuwu won both rounds, or lost both rounds, then there would be a third round. Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian would compete for first, second, or third place. If Ren Xiuwu's 2 rounds ended in a tie, then there was no need to compete in the third round. After the examination ended, the one who was qualified to be Xiuwu would be first, Ren Xiuwu would be second, and the one who lost to Ren Xiuwu would naturally be third. The first match soon began. Ren Xiuwu and Wei Qingxian both went up. Ren Xiuwu was 19 years old this year. At such a young age, he was already at the peak of the 8th level. From this, one could see that his aptitude was at the top among the 8-star heavenly mandate geniuses. There were more than 10 8-star heavenly mandates in the advanced class. They were around the same age as Ren Xiuwu, but none of them could be compared to him in terms of cultivation. They were all 1 or 2 levels lower. Thus, Ren Xiuwu had always been recognized as the number 1 genius in the academy. But today, he had to compete with 2 7th-level grandmasters for first place. Moreover, they were students who had only been in the academy for 3 months. This made his title seem a little low. Thus, Ren Xiuwu was very unhappy in his heart. In these 2 battles, it was natural for him to win, but if he lost, it would be a joke. How could he be happy? Senior brother Ren. Wei Qingxian first nodded at Ren Xiuwu. Although her face was covered with a veil, her eyes revealed her emotions. She was as calm as when facing everyone else. Ren Xiuwu's face was filled with arrogance as he nodded at Wei Qingxian. Wei Qingxian had many fans in the Zishan Academy. Ren Xiuwu's arrogant attitude made many students unhappy, especially the freshmen. Do your best. Senior Sister Wei. Defeat him. Senior Sister Wei, I support you. Some fanatics suddenly shouted again. Waves of voices came one after another, which made Ren Xiuwu's face as black as water. Shut up. Ren Xiuwu angrily rebuked the crowd. The aura of a peak 8th-level martial scholar erupted and covered the surroundings. Immediately, the freshmen who were shouting trembled and didn't dare to make a sound. However, this action made the freshmen even more unhappy. In their hearts, they hoped that Wei Qingxian would defeat Ren Xiuwu. Ren Xiuwu looked at Wei Qingxian with arrogance. At the same time, he didn't forget to glance at Yi Xing outside the arena. When there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey can be the overlord. With a tiger like me here, you 2 monkeys can forget about getting first place. Come on, I'll show you the true strength of a martial Dao master. Yi Xing's lips curled up slightly. This Ren Xiuwu was really arrogant. He saw himself as a tiger, but Yi Xing didn't think so. Just like in Tiansong City, Yi Xing only saw Wei Qingxian as his opponent. Wei Qingxian, like Yi Xing, only saw Yi Xing as her opponent. The others, even if they were as strong as Ren Xiuwu, were just targets to be surpassed quickly. Ren Xiuwu's arrogance made Wei Qingxian very unhappy. Her voice was much colder. I'll defeat you in 10 moves. Hiss! Sounds of people sucking in cold air could be heard. Even though all the new students hoped that Wei Qingxian could win, they didn't think that she would be able to defeat Ren Xiuwu in 10 moves. When they heard this, they were all shocked. Ren Xiuwu was furious. He was so angry that he laughed. The inner strength in his body surged and the surrounding wind started to spin around him. It seemed to form an aura field. In the middle of Ren Xiuwu's palms, there was a ball of bright light. That was a terrifying energy formed by pure inner strength. Supreme grade martial art, origin restoration force. A student who knew what it was immediately exclaimed. This was the martial art on the 4th floor of the library. Ren Xiuwu was the number 1 genius in the academy and was the number 1 in his batch. He was given special permission to learn supreme grade martial arts. Moreover, he was personally taught by the vice principal, Li Xiaoran, and was accepted as a disciple by Li Xiaoran. Origin Restoration Force was a martial art that combined cultivation and combat. Its specialty was that the inner strength was vigorous and could refine everything. When the powerful inner strength circulated, it would form an aura field around it. With the absolute power of the inner strength, it would sweep across all directions. However, in the face of Ren Xiaowu's origin restoration force, Wei Qingxian was not afraid at all. She took the initiative to attack. Wei Qingxian used the wind-stepping technique. It was as if there was wind under her feet. She was incomparably fast and in a flash, she appeared in front of Ren Xiaowu. "Come!" Ren Xiaowu shouted and sent a palm towards Wei Qingxian. The ball of bright light in the middle of his palm instantly exploded and turned into a wave of inner strength ripples. It continuously attacked Wei Qingxian. Wei Qingxuan's hands twined and twisted. They were so soft that they seemed boneless. In the blink of an eye, the surging inner strength ripples were twisted into nothingness. Middle-grade martial art, coiling snake hands. The coiling snake hands was similar to the soft bone palm. Its goal was to dissolve the opponent's attack. Furthermore, the soft bone palm's attack was merged into one, while the coiling snake hands was purely used to dissolve the opponent's attack. Its effect was better. In Ren Xiaowu's eyes, Wei Qingxuan's two arms had turned into two giant snakes that were waving around. These two giant snakes were really too big. It was as if they were connecting the heavens and earth. In front of these two giant snakes, he seemed so small. This caused Ren Xiaowu to be greatly shocked. His expression suddenly changed and his momentum was greatly reduced. On the other hand, Wei Qingxuan's two arms continuously twisted around. Every time she waved, a large portion of Ren Xiaowu's vigorous inner strength was dissolved. This caused the two balls of inner strength in Ren Xiaowu's palms and the surrounding inner strength aura field to gradually weaken. The first move. The second move. The third move. Wei Qingxian only used the coiling snake hands. One move after another, Ren Xiaowu's momentum and inner strength were weakened layer by layer. Every time Ren Xiaowu attacked, he was unable to hurt Wei Qingxuan's inner strength. Instead, he was constantly shocked and kept retreating. When Wei Qingxian used the seventh move, the inner strength aura field around Ren Xiaowu was completely destroyed by the coiling snake hands. The two balls of inner strength in Ren Xiaowu's palms also completely dissipated. His entire person looked dispirited, as if an immortal had been beaten down to the mortal world. Middle-grade martial arts technique, Roaring Tiger Fist. After dissolving Ren Xiaowu's returning origin force, Wei Qingxian immediately changed her martial arts technique and used the Roaring Tiger Fist. As she threw out a punch, the sound of a tiger's roar shook the surroundings. Her boxing technique was superb. An incomparably huge tiger appeared in front of Ren Xiaowu's eyes and pounced over, causing his heart to tremble. In such a state, Ren Xiaowu was completely unable to display his strength. Even if his cultivation was at the peak of LV8 and his body's inner strength was vigorous, he was still not Wei Qingxuan's opponent. The first punch. The second punch. Ren Xiaowu only managed to block Wei Qingxuan's punch before he was punched in the chest by Wei Qingxian. Bang! This heavy punch instantly dispersed the inner strength in Ren Xiaowu's body. His chest suddenly felt a sharp pain and his body involuntarily flew backwards. After flying for more than 10 meters, Ren Xiaowu landed on the ground. Then, he took another 8 or 9 steps back before the terrifying force in his body dissipated. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He had a shocked expression. He never thought that Wei Qingxian would be able to injure him with just the 9th move when she said that she would defeat him in 10 moves. At this moment, Ren Xiaowu was too ashamed to show his face. "Do you still want to fight? Senior brother Ren." Wei Qingxian did not continue to attack. Instead, she stopped in the distance and asked. Ren Xiaowu was conflicted. If he admitted defeat like this, then Wei Qingxuan's claim of defeating him in 10 moves was true. This would obviously cause him to lose face. However, he also knew that even if he continued to fight, he was not Wei Qingxuan's opponent. Moreover, if he continued to fight, the result would not be as simple as the current injury. If he was seriously injured by Wei Qingxian, how could he fight with Yixing? Losing to Wei Qingxian was already embarrassing enough. If he lost to Yixing, then his reputation as the school's #1 genius would be completely lost. I must conserve my strength. I lost to the first person, but I must not lose to the second person. Ren Xiaowu thought. To conserve his strength, he must admit defeat to Wei Qingxian. With Ren Xiuwu's arrogant character, he could not say the words, "I lost." Ren Xiuwu did not reply to Wei Qingxuan's words. Instead, he turned around and left the arena. Although he did not admit defeat, he had admitted defeat with his actions. In an instant, the square was filled with thunderous cheers. Chapter 121. Senior Sister Yi. All the freshmen shouted excitedly and clapped their hands. Their voices shook the heavens and the applause was like thunder. Wei Qingxian was in the 7th stage of the martial path and defeated Ren Xiuwu, who was at the peak of the 8th stage, in less than 10 moves. This was too shocking. Because it was too shocking, the joy was especially strong. A freshman who had just entered the school for 3 months had defeated the top student of the previous year. All the freshmen felt honored and were extremely excited. In contrast to the freshmen's enthusiasm and joy, many of the older students were dejected and depressed. Ren Xiuwu's defeat made them feel ashamed. Fortunately, although Wei Qingxian was a freshman, she was accepted into the advanced genius class as an exception. She was a student of the advanced class in name. The older students could only comfort themselves like this. At the same time, they hoped that Ren Xiuwu could defeat Yi Xing in the next battle. This way, the older students would be able to raise their heads slightly. Ren Xiuwu had lost 2 matches in a row. Not only had Ren Xiuwu lost all face, but the older students were also ashamed in front of the freshmen. Wei Qingxian left the stage amidst the excited shouts of the freshmen. As for Ren Xiuwu, his face was as heavy as water as he returned to the edge of the stage. He closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing, preparing for the next battle. There was a 15-minute break between the 2 battles. Yi Xing, Wei Qingxian left the stage and came to Yi Xing's side. "You fought very well." Yi Xing looked at her and smiled. I'm waiting to fight with Yi Xing for first place." Wei Qingxian blinked her eyes and her eyes lit up. Yi Xing touched his nose and smiled indifferently. He didn't answer and only glanced at Ren Xiuwu in the distance. Many of the freshmen looked at Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian standing together with envy. However, they could only look at them with envy. Other than Yi Xing, who also had abnormal battle strength, who else could stand side by side with her? The break time passed quickly and it was time for the second battle. Yi Xing and Ren Xiuwu entered the stage. Ren Xiuwu's expression wasn't as arrogant as in the first battle, but there was still a hint of condescension in his eyes. "I lost to the first one, so I definitely won't lose to the second one." Ren Xiuwu stared at Yi Xing and said resolutely, "That might not necessarily be the case." Yi Xing rubbed his nose, a hint of a smile in his voice. The meaning behind Yi Xing's words made Ren Xiuwu's heart burn with anger. He snorted coldly. Ren Xiuwu did not use his full strength to deal with Wei Qingxian just now. His purpose was to be able to face Yi Xing. In fact, other than the strength of the Origin Gathering Force, he had another trump card. He had already lost 1 match, so he definitely could not lose a second match. He couldn't help but be shocked. It was indeed a little beyond his expectations. But that was it. The shock in his heart only existed for a moment and didn't cause the slightest change in his expression. The 3 balls of inner strength attacked together. In such a short distance, it was impossible to split them apart with his movement technique. He could only rely on his powerful strength to block them. Silver Body Technique, Boulder Fist. Yi Xing activated the Silver Body Technique and raised his physical strength and defense to the limit. At the same time, he used a defensive middle-grade martial skill. Yi Xing's body glowed with silver light. His body was like a boulder and didn't move at all. The 3 balls of inner strength were hit by Yi Xing's fist and exploded. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying inner strength energy exploded and the light bloomed. In an instant, it engulfed an area of several feet. In the area of several feet where the light bloomed, the students could only see a bright light. They couldn't see Yi Xing's figure at all. They didn't know how Yi Xing was after being attacked by the 3 balls of inner strength. Was it a light injury? Or a serious injury? Or was he directly killed by the explosion? The explosion of the 3 balls of inner strength was too terrifying. Most of the students only had these 3 questions in their minds. As for Yi Xing being safe and sound, except for a few, most of the students felt that it was impossible. Boom! Just as the students opened their eyes wide and wanted to see the light bloom, Yi Xing's situation exploded again. A palm stretched out from the energy-blooming light and pressed on Ren Xiuwu's body in the blink of an eye. Ren Xiuwu's inner strength was exhausted at this moment. How could he withstand such a palm? He was instantly blasted dozens of feet away and spat out blood. Yi Xing appeared in front of Ren Xiuwu. Although his hair and clothes were a little messy, he was full of energy and there wasn't the slightest injury on his body. Hiss! The sound of cold air being sucked in was heard. The students were all shocked. Yi Xing's defense was too terrifying. Even such a terrifying attack couldn't hurt him. He was probably invulnerable. Unless it was a top-grade weapon, who could break through such a terrifying defense? Senior brother Yi. After a moment of silence, someone immediately shouted excitedly. All the new students reacted in an instant. One by one, they shouted excitedly, each wave of their voices louder than the previous. In the hearts of the older students, they didn't feel shame. They were only surprised, shocked, and dumbfounded. This couldn't be blamed on Ren Xiuwu's lack of strength. It was because Yi Xing was too abnormal. He was simply a demon and couldn't be judged by common sense. This kid really surprises me. At the edge of the square, Ma Yuanji was in a very bad mood. He thought that Ren Xiuwu could take first place, but in the end he lost 2 rounds in a row. He snorted coldly. Unfortunately, you still have to die. I went out for a drink today and took up a lot of time. The update is a little late. Sorry. I can only update 2 chapters normally today. There's 1 more tonight. Tomorrow, I'll continue to explode. Chapter 122. In the VIP building. All the teachers were in shock. Yi Xing was actually unscathed under the attack of 30% return to origin force. This was beyond their expectations. On the highest floor of the VIP building, the 2 vice principals, Li Xiaoran and Wang Haiqing, had gloomy expressions. Ren Xiuwu was Li Xiaoran's disciple. He was at the peak of the 8th rank and was known as the number 1 genius in his batch. Li Xiaoran had always been proud of Ren Xiuwu. Today, Ren Xiuwu was first defeated by Wei Qingxian, and then Wei Qingxian was defeated by Yi Xing, 2 7th-level martial Dao masters. While Ren Xiuwu was humiliated, it also made Li Xiaoran, the vice dean, feel embarrassed and depressed. As for Wang Haiqing, he simply couldn't bear to see Yi Xing doing well. The better Yi Xing was, the more unhappy he was. Yi Xing could be said to be in the limelight. The cheers from the students were no less than when Wei Qingxian had defeated Ren Xiuwu. Yi Xing's limelight made Wang Haiqing's teeth itch. However, as soon as Wang Haiqing thought about how Yi Xing would be taken away by the 3 martial saints from the Purple Sun Institute at the end of the examination, the anger in Wang Haiqing's heart would subside, replaced by a cold sneer and joy. The other vice principal, Wu Yunshan, didn't have any grudges with Yi Xing. He looked at Yi Xing with a neutral gaze and was deeply shocked. Even though he didn't have any relationship with Yi Xing, he couldn't help but be impressed by Yi Xing's heaven-defying strength. He couldn't help but sigh. Wu Yunshan was very clear that although the Zishan College and the Ziyang College only had 1-word difference, they weren't on the same level. If it wasn't for Zishan Ho, any martial saint teacher from the Ziyang College would be enough to crush the entire Zishan College. As for Zishan Ho, Wu Yunshan only knew that he rarely showed himself in the past 10 years since he was conferred the title of Zishan Ho. He also didn't care much about the affairs of the Ziyang College, and his legs were crippled. Even as a king, he probably couldn't control the colossus that was the Ziyang College. Especially when the vice principal of the Ziyang College came personally with 2 martial saint teachers. A total of 3 martial saints. If they wanted someone, who could stop them? In Wu Yunshan's opinion, Zishan Ho definitely couldn't stop them. Although Yi Xing performed outstandingly, only death. At the edge of the square, the 3 martial saints from the Ziyang College had different expressions. Ma's face was full of displeasure. Because of his accurate judgment, Shi Gaoji's face was full of smiles. This kid is indeed not bad. Xianxia Temple must have made an error in judgment to have died at his hands. Ma Yuanji's voice was sinister. What, you've taken a fancy to this brat? Don't forget Heeses. Shigaoji smiled. I like to see geniuses fall. The more outstanding the fallen genius, the more excited I am. Martial arts geniuses are still geniuses. Ma Yuanji's mouth cracked open, a similar smile appearing on his face. This is indeed something to be excited about, hee. A quarter of an hour later, the most important battle of this exam began. The battle of first and second place. However, two new students who had just entered the college for 3 months, and both of them were at the 7th level of the martial path. Yet, they were fighting for first and second place in the advanced class exam. This really made one not know whether to laugh or cry. The advanced class students had already recovered from their shock. They all felt that they had lost face. In this exam, the advanced class students could be considered to have lost face. Yi Xing and Wei Qingxian entered the arena, attracting everyone's attention. Regarding these two martial masters who both had heaven-defying battle strength, who was stronger and who would take first place, no one was uninterested. However, the situation was somewhat out of everyone's expectations. I admit defeat. Before the battle began, Wei Qingxian decisively said these 3 words. Wei Qingxian actually admitted defeat? All the students' eyeballs fell to the ground. This shouldn't be. Razin only showed a strong defense, but in terms of combat power, he was no better than Wei Qingxian. Why did you admit defeat? Yi Xing asked. Everyone's ears perked up. This was also the question they wanted to know. In terms of attack power, we should be about the same. Our martial arts attainments are also very similar. However, your defense is much higher. Your skin is so thick and I can't hurt you. In this battle, there is no winning or losing. Why should I make a move? Wei Qingxian blinked, her big eyes flickering. When the students heard this, they were suddenly enlightened. Thinking of Yi Xing's terrifying defensive power, even 30% of the returning origin force could not hurt him. Wei Qingxian was right when she said that his skin was rough and his flesh was thick. They all felt that Wei Qingxuan's words made sense. However, Yi Xing didn't think so. He could naturally see that Wei Qingxuan's cultivation was at the peak of the 7th stage. It was much higher than him and had a lot of advantages. If Yi Xing didn't use the super brain scan in the battle, he wouldn't have the confidence to defeat Wei Qingxian at all. In fact, Yi Xing felt that the opponent's chances of winning were higher. Firstly, a strong defense didn't mean that he was invincible. With Wei Qingxuan's strength and her finger technique, she could hurt Yi Xing. Secondly, Yi Xing could feel a kind of aura from Wei Qingxian. It was the aura of a peerless master. Even if it was a superb martial art, different people would have different understandings. Yi Xing believed in his intuition. Since Wei Qingxian had the aura of a peerless master, even if it was only a trace, it was definitely very terrifying. It was certain that if the warrior sage suppressed her realm to the 7th stage of the martial path, Yi Xing wouldn't be her opponent. This was because no matter what, Yi Xing couldn't compare with her in any aspect. The warrior sage's understanding of martial arts was definitely deeper than Yi Xing's. Obviously, Wei Qingxian didn't know that Yi Xing had a super brain. Therefore, even though she had the chance to win, she took the initiative to admit defeat. Yi Xing's super brain reacted quickly and understood that Wei Qingxian was purposely letting him win. Not only was Wei Qingxian a martial arts genius, she was also a cultivation genius with a 9-star destiny. Although she was younger than him by 2 years, her cultivation was higher than his. As for him, although his martial arts talent was extremely high, a 2-star destiny was indeed a shortcoming. With Wei Qingxuan's talent, no matter if she won first or second place, she would still be valued by the academy. However, Yi Xing might not receive such treatment. Therefore, Wei Qingxian purposely let Yi Xing win first place and become the most famous student of the Indigo Mountain Academy. It was impossible for the academy not to value him. If he was valued by the academy, needless to say, he would be heavily nurtured. Moreover, the Indigo Mountain Academy had no reason to let the Purple Sun Academy take away their first-place student. Wei Qingxuan's other goal was to help Yi Xing get rid of the danger. Yi Xing's guess was correct, but there was one thing he had guessed wrong. Wei Qingxuan's heavenly fate was far beyond 9 stars. In front of Zi Shanhou, she had tested the heavenly fate of a peak martial saint. I understand, thank you. Yi Xing nodded towards Wei Qingxian. The Indigo Mountain Academy's Advanced Genius Class examination had ended. Yi Xing won first place, Wei Qingxian second, Ren Xiuwu third, Bu Haoling fourth. Li Pengfei was heavily injured by Yi Xing and lost to Bu Haoling, so he was in 5th place. Chou Tianda, Si Kongya, Su Maodian, Wu Yingkai, and Yan Feilwan were in the top 10. Apart from the top 5, the top 10 had the same rewards, so there was no ranking. Soon, everyone's rewards were distributed by the academy. The Advanced Genius Class's reward was originally double the new disciple's reward, but now it was doubled again. Yi Xing received 48 high-grade star accumulating pellets and 12 high-grade herbs as a reward. The competition was over, and the rewards were distributed. The examination was truly over. At this time, the 3 martial saints from the Indigo Mountain Academy cheered up. Finally, this damned examination was over. It was time to fulfill their purpose. Zi Shanhou, the examination is over. It's time to hand over Yi Xing to us. The vice principal of the Indigo Mountain Academy, Mo Baixing, said loudly, "Moreover, we have a request. Wei Qingxuan's talent is very good. Our Indigo Mountain Academy is willing to accept her into the gifted class. For her future, let her follow us to the Indigo Mountain Academy. We will compensate the Indigo Mountain Academy." Mo Baixing's words immediately angered the students of the Indigo Mountain Academy. If it was before, when they said that Yi Xing had killed a student of the Indigo Mountain Academy and wanted to take away Yi Xing, most of the students did not feel anything. But now, Yi Xing was the #1 person in the Indigo Mountain Academy. He had a high popularity and was simply the representative of the academy, the role model of the students. The Indigo Mountain Academy taking away Yi Xing was obviously disadvantageous to Yi Xing. Naturally, the students were unhappy. Moreover, Mo Baixing also said that he wanted to take Wei Qingxian away from the Indigo Mountain Academy and recruit her into the Indigo Mountain Academy. This was poaching, and the one being poached was Wei Qingxian, the only student in the Indigo Mountain Academy who was more popular than Yi Xing. How could the students be happy? Naturally, they were angry and protested again and again. Mo Baixing snorted coldly and released his martial saint aura. His aura suppressed the students in all directions. Immediately, the students' faces were filled with horror. Naturally, the voices stopped. At this time, on the highest floor of the VIP building, Zi Shanhou spoke. "If you say that Yi Xing killed someone, then he killed someone. What proof do you have? Moreover, even if Yi Xing killed someone, it depends on whether he deserved to be killed or not. Yi Xing, tell me, did you kill a student of the Indigo Mountain Academy? If you did, why did you kill him?" Zi Shanhou's words made Yi Xing happy. As a marquis, Zi Shanhou was indeed not someone who would allow others to come to his territory and cause trouble. Since Zi Shanhou wanted to get involved in this matter, Yi Xing naturally told him everything about the Silver Star fruit tree that he had discovered in the Savage Beast Ridge of the Azure Cloud Mountain Range. When the students heard this, they were envious of Yi Xing for being able to find the Silver Star fruit. At the same time, they were also angry. The actions of the Indigo Mountain Range were indeed extremely vile. No matter who encountered it, they would not be able to tolerate it. So it's like this. Such a reckless person deserves to be killed. Good job. Zi Shanhou's voice came from the highest floor of the VIP building. When the students of the Indigo Mountain Academy heard Zi Shanhou's words, they were all delighted. Yes, he deserves to be killed. Good job. As for Mo Baixing, Shigaoji, and Maiwenji, the 3 martial saints, they were enraged. Chapter 123. The auras of the 3 martial saints exploded, covering the entire area. All the students were shocked and retreated. The auras of the martial saints were too terrifying for them. Mo Baixing said angrily, "Zi Shanhou, what is the meaning of this? Zhenxiang Temple is a student of our Ziyang Academy, the younger brother of Zhenqiusi, a genius disciple of the Falling Star sect. Xianxia Temple died at the hands of Yi Xing, you know the consequences. Xianxia, the teachers and students of the Purple Mountain Academy, basically no one knew who he was, but if Mo Baixing knew, Zi Shanhou definitely knew. Because Zi Shanhou was once a disciple of the Falling Star sect. It didn't matter if the teachers and students didn't know, just his identity as a genius disciple of the Falling Star sect was enough to shock everyone. On the highest floor of the VIP building, Zi Shanhou's eyes flashed. Zhen Qiuxi, of course he knew, he was that person's disciple. Scram! Zi Shanhou's voice sounded, full of dominance. The three vice deans and Wang Feng behind Zi Shanhou were all stunned at this moment. It was the first time they saw Zi Shanhou's domineering side. The deacons, teachers and other elders of the academy were also surprised. They had stayed in the Purple Mountain Academy for a long time and naturally knew Zi Shanhou's actions. He either ignored them or turned big problems into small ones and small ones into nothing. Zi Shanhou's domineering attitude today was very unexpected. As for the students, they didn't know much about Zi Shanhou. To them, Zi Shanhou was a legendary figure. At this moment, seeing Zi Shanhou's domineering attitude, they were all incomparably excited and exhilarated. The students hated the three martial saints of the Ziyang Academy and were furious. Zi Shanhou directly told them to scram, which could be considered as letting them vent their anger. Just now, Zi Shanhou said that Xianxia Temple deserved to be killed, which made the three martial saints furious. Now that Zi Shanhou directly told them to scram, the three martial saints were even more furious. You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Mo Baixing's face darkened and waved at Ma Yuanji beside him. Ma Yuanji understood. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as his eyes locked onto Yixing. Whoosh, his figure flashed and disappeared. Since Zi Shanhou was not tactful, they could only take action themselves. Let's see who in the Zishan Academy could stop them. In their hearts, they did not put Zi Shanhou, a crippled martial saint, in their eyes. Although Zi Shanhou had once been a genius disciple of although Zi Shanhou had been conferred the title of Marquis by the Emperor of the Falling Star country, he was now crippled. Without strength, he was nothing. In the Star Continent, the strong were respected. Strength was the most important thing. As long as one had sufficient strength, if one was even stronger than the Luoxing Heavenly King, then one could disregard the Luoxing Heavenly King. Yi Xing immediately felt a terrifying sense of danger when the martial saint made his move. His super brain had detected a figure pouncing towards him, but the speed was too fast for him to dodge. Bang! A fist print that was even faster than a silhouette suddenly appeared. Before Ma Yuanji's hand could even touch Yi Xing, he was hit by the fist print, and a loud explosion rang out. Ma Yuanji's figure disappeared in an instant. He was directly sent flying, turning into a flash of light. Bang! Almost in the blink of an eye, another explosion rang out in the distance. The students did not see what had happened at all. Their attention was attracted by the explosion in the distance, and they looked over. They saw a human-shaped hole in the wall of a building more than 100 meters away, but Ma Yuanji's figure was nowhere to be seen. At this moment, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Ma Yuanji was nowhere to be seen. That human-shaped hole was obviously created by him. Thinking of the fist print just now, how could the crowd not understand that Ma Yuanji had been sent flying by the fist print in an instant just now, creating a huge hole in the wall more than 100 meters away? However, it was easy to understand, but difficult to accept. This was too unimaginable. How powerful was that punch just now? Even a martial saint was sent flying in an instant. Below the martial saint realm, even a 9th-stage martial grandmaster was as insignificant as an ant in front of this punch, not even worth mentioning. Yi Xing's heart was also shocked at this moment. He had always aimed to become a martial saint, to become a peerless expert. But now, a martial saint was sent flying with a single punch in front of him. The impact on him was too great. What was a peerless expert? Not to say that they were invincible in the world, but at least they stood at the peak of the martial way. Only people who could compete with them and no one could defeat them could be considered a peerless expert. Being sent flying with a single punch, how could this be a peerless expert? It was more like a clown jumping around. At this moment, Yixing had a new goal in his heart, and that was Xianxia. In other words, Yixing's goal of becoming a peerless expert did not change, but the definition of a peerless expert had changed. There was a huge gap in strength between martial saints, just like the gap between the 9 stages of the martial way. Yixing's goal was not only to become a martial saint, but to become a martial saint like Xianxia. Z! Mo Baixing shouted. Then, just as he shouted a word, a palm print shot out from the highest floor of the VIP building. Boom! The palm print soared into the air and instantly became 10 feet large, slamming down on Hao Baixing and Shigaoji. The 10 feet large palm print was even bigger than a house. The students looked at the palm print with their hearts thumping. At the 7th stage of the martial way, internal strength could leave the body and injure people. However, whether it was the 7th, 8th, or 9th stage of the martial way, the internal strength that left the body was incomparably small in front of this palm print. It looked very ridiculous. This was the real internal strength that left the body to injure people. The palm print was like a huge boulder the size of a house pressing down. Whether it was the power or momentum, it was extremely terrifying. Mo Baixing had just shouted a word, but his expression changed greatly. He could not shout a second word. In an instant, the celestial essence in his body circulated and he slammed his palm into the air, attacking the 10 feet large palm print. Shigaoji naturally attacked at the same time. The 2 martial saints joined forces to attack the 10 feet large palm print. However, the power of this palm print was beyond everyone's imagination. The downward momentum was unstoppable. In an instant, Mo Baixing and Shigaoji's attack and momentum were destroyed. In the blink of an eye, they were slammed into the ground. Bang! With a loud explosion, the whole square shook. The place where the palm print slammed down was a mess of dust and gravel. When the dust settled, the students could see clearly that the palm print had sunk into the ground. A 10 feet large palm print had appeared, surrounded by cracks. Inside the sunken palm print, Mo Baixing and Shigaoji both vomited blood. Their bodies sank into the ground. It was obvious how powerful and terrifying that palm print was. The students were all excited, their hearts thumping. Today was an eye-opener for them. 1 punch sent a martial saint flying, and 1 palm slapped down 2 martial saints. Xianxia's strength was beyond everyone's imagination. It was extremely shocking. Originally, Xianxia rarely showed his face, which made him seem very mysterious. In the hearts of the students, his position was very high. Now, seeing Xianxia's strength, they were even more in awe of Xianxia. Although the students did not see Xianxia with their own eyes, in the Xian Academy, there was only 1 martial saint, Xianxia. The one who attacked could only be him. Crippled? Whoever dares to say that Xianxia is crippled is blind. Which cripple could have such terrifying strength? Yixing's heart was also thumping. He was very excited. Swoosh! A figure rushed over from the distance, appearing at the edge of the sunken palm print. It was Ma Yuanji, who was sent flying by Xianxia's fist. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. The punch just now had made him feel very uncomfortable, and he was already injured. Inside the sunken palm print, Mo Baixing and Shigaoji vomited blood and got up. There was no longer a trace of arrogance on their faces. Instead, they were filled with dread and fear. Xianxia, you've gone too far. Mo Baixing clenched his fists and roared in a low voice. Ziyang Academy was one of the 3 strongest academies in Luoxing country. As the vice principal of Ziyang Academy, Mo Baixing was a 4-star martial saint with a high position. Even if he was in other counties, the nobles would still have to receive him politely. However, in this Zishan county that he did not put in his eyes, he was humiliated to such an extent. Being slapped to the ground with a single palm, Mo Baixing was unable to restrain his anger. Ma Yuanji and Shigaoji's faces were also ashen. As martial saints, they were high and mighty in front of 9th-level martial artists. When had they ever been humiliated like this? Scram! Xianxia's response was still only 1 word. His voice was filled with dominance and majesty. The three martial saints clenched their fists. The anger in their hearts was too great, and their chests were about to explode. It was rumored that Xianxia was a cripple, but in the end, Xianxia's strength was actually so strong, far from what the three of them could match. If Xianxia Temple was just an ordinary student of Ziyang Academy, then it would be fine. They could just bear with it. However, Xianxia Temple's older brother, Xianxia, was a genius disciple of the Luoxing sect. His future was limitless. Moreover, Xianxia's master was an elder of the Luoxing sect. His position was extraordinary. If Xianxia blamed them and said that Ziyang Academy did not care about his brother's life or death, the consequences for Ziyang Academy would definitely be severe. Therefore, even though the three martial saints were very afraid of Xianxia, they were not willing to just leave like this. They still wanted to use all methods to bring Yixing away. Vice Principal Mo, what should we do? Vice Principal Mo, are we just going to let it go like this? If we can't bring Yixing back, it will be difficult to explain to the principal. Shi Gaoji and Ma Yuanji both transmitted their voices to Mo Baixing. Mo Baixing transmitted his voice. Use the power of astrology and fight it out with him. I don't believe that with the three of us combined, we won't be able to hold him back for a bit. As long as we can hold him back for a moment, Ma Yuanji, you can seize the opportunity to capture Yixing, and then we'll escape on the Blue Wind Eagles. Even if Xianxia is strong, he can only watch us leave, unable to do anything. As long as we return to Ziyang Academy, no matter how strong Xianxia is, Ziyang Academy will be able to deal with him. Vice Principal Mo, what about Wei Qingxian? Why not bring her along? Shi Gaoji asked unwillingly. It'll be good enough if we can take one. To be absolutely safe, we'll only capture Yixing and then escape. Mo Baixing transmitted his voice. This chapter is very exciting. Hee brothers, are you enjoying it? If so, please vote for me. Chapter 124. All of the students felt very happy in their hearts. Xianxia's attitude towards the three martial saints of Ziyang Academy made the students feel very relieved. All the students stared at Mo Baixing, Shi Gaoji, and Ma Yuanji, waiting for them to scram. However, the three martial saints didn't scram. Instead, the sky above them suddenly changed, turning into a starry sky. 3 stars the size of small mountains appeared above the heads of the 3 martial sages. In an instant, surging starlight fell from the 3 stars, causing Mo Baixing and the other 2 martial saints' astral power to surge, their spirits to relax, and their strength to greatly increase. All the students were shaken, staring straight at the stars. Of course, these weren't real stars, but the manifestation of an astrological aspect. Only martial saints could control their own astrological aspect and use its power. This was the most fundamental difference between a martial saint and a martial artist of the 9th realm. As the 3 manifested their astrological aspects, Mo Baixing sneered. Xianxia, you've actually recovered from your injuries. This is indeed unexpected. However, the disability of your legs can't be healed. After all, it's still inconvenient for you to move. You can't stop us. As Mo Baixing sneered, the 3 martial saints clawed out at the same time, supported by surging astral power, causing the 3 martial saints' astral essence to become extremely rich. It flowed through their arms, turning into 3 giant starlight hands. These 3 starlight hands grabbed at Yixing at the same time. At this moment, Yixing only felt the air around him solidify, suppressed by a terrifying power, unable to move or breathe. In the face of absolute strength, even if he had a super brain and could scan the trajectory of the 3 starlight hands, he couldn't dodge or move. He could only watch the 3 giant hands grab at him. Courting death. An angry roar came from the highest floor of the VIP tower, and Xianxia suddenly stood up. Whoosh! In an instant, the sky changed color. In the sky above the VIP tower, a huge flaming star suddenly appeared, several times larger than the combined stars of Mo Baixing and the other 2 martial saints' astrological aspects. Such a huge flaming star floated in the sky like a sun, burning everything, terrifying everyone. Compared to Xianxia's astrological aspects, Mo Baixing and the other two martial saints' astrological aspects were like barren meteorites. Boom! As soon as Xianxia's celestial body appeared, a wave of heat soared into the sky, suddenly transforming into an incomparably huge flaming hand. Mo Baixing and the other two's starlight hands were like snowflakes touching the sun in front of the giant flaming hand. They melted rapidly, turning into nothingness before they could even touch Yixing. The giant flaming hand instantly reached the three martial sages and pressed down on them like a flaming mountain. Bang, bang, bang. The astral avatars of the three martial sages were instantly destroyed. The three of them continuously spat out blood as their bodies flew back dozens of meters like kites with their strings cut. They were already severely injured. This was after Xianxia had shown mercy and did not take their lives. Otherwise, if Xianxia had used the power of astrology, killing the three of them would have been as easy as flipping his hand. However, there was no deep hatred between Xianxia and the three martial saints. The three of them were only following orders, so Xianxia naturally did not kill them. Moreover, it was rare for one martial saint to appear in 1,000,000 cultivators. The Fallen Star Kingdom's territory spanned more than 10,000 li and had a population of more than 1,000,000,000, but there were less than 2,000 martial saints. Every martial saint was a high-end power of the Fallen Star Kingdom. The fall of one was a loss to the Fallen Star Kingdom. Therefore, the life and death of a martial saint was a matter of great importance to the kingdom and was heavily protected by the kingdom. If there was no reason to kill a martial saint, killing one was a great crime. Scram! Xianxia retracted his astral avatar and the world returned to its original state. He coldly shouted again. Mo Baixing and the other two were severely injured and frightened. They never thought that Xianxia would have such a terrifying astral avatar. Only now did they realize that 10 years ago, when Xianxia was not injured and crippled, he was also a genius disciple of the Fallen Star sect. Now, it seemed that Xianxia was not an ordinary genius among the Fallen Star sect disciples. Before becoming a martial saint, one's battle prowess was only related to martial skills, movement skills, and body refinement techniques. However, after becoming a martial saint, the astral avatar was also one of the most important factors in battle prowess. The stronger the astral avatar, the more terrifying the martial saint's strength would be. Xianxia actually had a fire attribute astral avatar, causing Mo Baixing and the other two to be frightened. A martial saint with an astral avatar was much stronger than an ordinary martial saint. Once the astral avatar was used, it could completely crush any ordinary astral avatar martial saint. Mo Baixing and the other two were all ordinary astral avatars, so how could they not be afraid of Xianxia? Not to mention that their cultivation was lower than Xianxia's. Even if their cultivation was slightly higher than Xianxia's, they would still be crushed by Xianxia's fire attribute astral avatar. Although the life and death of a martial saint were protected by the country, they had repeatedly angered Xianxia. With Xianxia's status as a feudal lord, if he really killed the three of them, it would not be a big deal. The three of them did not care about the injuries on their bodies. Each of them was as fast as lightning, rushing to the side of the three blue-winged eagles at the edge of the square, instantly jumping onto their backs. Bush, bush, bush. Immediately, the three blue-winged eagles flapped their wings and soared into the sky. This hoe is telling you to get out. On the highest floor of the VIP building, Xianxia angrily shouted. Suddenly, a terrifying force gushed out from his body. The shadow of a bow flashed, and Xianxia waved his hand. Whoosh, an arrow shot out, instantly rushing out of the VIP building through the window, like a stream of light flashing in the air. In just the blink of an eye, the arrow made a circle in the air, returning to Xianxia from its original path. Xianxia waved his sleeve, and the arrow disappeared. Xianxia withdrew the arrow, and three miserable cries came from the sky. The three blue-winged eagles soared about 100 meters into the sky, and fell one after another. On their heads, there was a bloody hole of the same size, which was the cause of their death. Most people did not see how the three blue-winged eagles died, but Yixing barely scanned the trajectory of the arrow with his super brain. In the blink of an eye, the arrow had pierced through the heads of the 3 blue wind eagles. Xianxia didn't kill Mo Baixing and the other 2 because they were martial saints. However, he didn't have any misgivings about their mounts. So what if he killed them? Mo Baixing, Shigaoji, and Mayuanji, the 3 martial saints, fell from nearly 100 meters in the air. Their expressions changed greatly, and they hurriedly used their movement skills and circulated their celestial essence. Only then did they land safely on the ground. Bang, bang, bang. The corpses of the 3 blue wind eagles fell one after another beside the 3 martial saints. This made the 3 martial saints feel a stabbing pain in their hearts. Flying mounts were extremely difficult to tame, especially these 3 blue wind eagles, which were equivalent to a 9th-level martial master. However, they were all killed by Xianxia in an instant, which was a huge loss to the Purple Sun Institute. Although their hearts were pained, the 3 martial saints did not dare to say anything. They came here on the back of the blue wind eagles, which was already a great disrespect to the Purple Sun Institute. Now, they wanted to directly fly over the Purple Sun Institute, which was obviously asking for trouble. Bush, bush, bush. The 3 martial saints did not dare to stay, and quickly used their movement skills to rush to the main gate of the Purple Sun Institute. Their hearts were filled with regret for this trip to the Purple Sun Institute. Only when they left the Purple Sun Institute did Mo Baixing and the other 2 let out a sigh of relief. The 3 of them looked at each other, their eyes full of unwillingness and resentment, but also deep regret. Now that they had no flying mounts, they could only buy demonic horses in the Purple Sun County City, which would take several times more time than riding the blue wind eagles. In the Purple Sun Institute, when the students saw the 3 martial saints leave in a sorry state, they burst into cheers. Each and every one of them was incomparably happy. Towards Yixing, perhaps there were still a few students who were hostile, but towards Xianxia defeating the 3 martial saints of the Purple Sun Institute, as a student of the Purple Sun Institute, all of them were incomparably excited. Therefore, the cheers were especially enthusiastic, even more so than the scene of Yixing and Wei Qingxian defeating Ren Xiuwu. In the VIP building, Xianxia walked step by step to the side of the window. Every step he took made a clattering sound on the ground, and the way he walked seemed to be somewhat uncoordinated. If one looked carefully, they would notice that Xianxia's 2 feet were made of wood, and his real feet were 2 inches below his knees. Standing by the window and looking at the shouts and cheers of the numerous students below, Xianxia's expression was as calm as an ancient well, but a wave of emotion rose up in his heart, and he once again had some of the heroic spirit of his youth. I've been silent for too long, and the Fallen Star Kingdom has long lost my Hua Tianfeng's reputation. Even some cats and dogs dare to be impudent in front of me. Waves of emotion rose up in Xianxia's heart as he secretly muttered to himself. 14 years, I've endured humiliation for an entire 14 years, not to live a life of cowardice, but to wait for an opportunity to take back everything I've lost in the past. Now, my injuries have completely healed, my archery has broken through to the free will realm, and my martial arts have already advanced to the 9th level of the Star Vortex realm. It's time for me to retaliate. Xianxia's gaze flashed, containing an aura that was like surging waves as he looked into the distance. When the Dark Knight organization was destroyed, you should have already guessed that my injuries have healed. However, you couldn't get rid of me in the past, and you can't in the future. Even if my legs are crippled, there will be a day when I'll take your dog life. Xianxia pronounced the last 3 words in his heart almost word by word. At this moment, his body trembled slightly, and his emotions fluctuated greatly. Obviously, Huan Shu had a great influence on him, and there must be an extraordinary grudge between the 2 of them. Report. Marquis, military situation at the border. At this moment, another blue-winged eagle directly rushed into the sky above the Zishan Academy. On the back of the blue-winged eagle, a martial Dao master shouted from afar. Xianxia's expression froze. The Zishan County was one of the counties at the border of the Fallen Star Kingdom, bordering the East Fu Nation. The Fallen Star Kingdom and the East Fu Nation were hostile nations, and there were always battles between them. However, ever since he became Zishan Ho, there had never been such an urgent military situation report. The words military situation at the border attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked towards the martial Dao master on the back of the blue wind eagle. Yi Xing was stunned. He recognized this martial Dao master. It was martial Dao master Mu Feng, who was recruiting students in the celestial Azure City. Chapter 125. Seeing Mu Feng, Yi Xing sighed in his heart. When they were in Tiansong City, Mu Feng was a peak level 8 martial scholar. He was so high and mighty that even Yi Xing had to look up to him. But now, he had already killed a peak level 8 martial scholar and defeated another peak level 8 martial scholar head-on. He had already surpassed Mu Feng. All in all, it had only been about 3 months. Yi Xing was very satisfied with his progress. However, when he thought of the powerful strength possessed by a martial saint, especially when he saw Zishan Ho easily crush 3 martial saints, Yi Xing was unwilling to be satisfied. He still had a long way to go on the martial path, and he needed to continue moving forward. Mu Feng controlled the blue wind eagle to land on the plaza. He jumped down from the eagle's back and cupped his fists towards Zishan Ho. Reporting to the Marquis, the Dongfu nation has sent out 1 million soldiers and divided them into 4 groups to invade our Luoxing kingdom. 300,000 of them went to Chang'an County, 300,000 to Nanshan County, 200,000 to Guangling County, and the remaining 200,000 to Zishan County. Normal prefectures had 30 to 50,000 troops. Due to geographical reasons, the prefectures at the border had 100 to 200,000 troops. Zishan Prefecture was close to Green Cloud Mountain and did not have much contact with Dongfu country. As such, they only had 100,000 troops while the enemy had 200,000. The difference in numbers was huge, and Zishan Prefecture was at a disadvantage. When the students heard this, all of them were indignant and furious. There was no other reason than because the enmity between the Falling Star Kingdom and the Dongfu Kingdom was too great. More than 100 years ago, the Falling Star sect was divided due to the internal strife for the position of sect master. During the time of the internal strife, the East Fu nation took advantage of the situation and invaded the Falling Star Kingdom. They even started a war between the sects, causing the lineage of the sect master of the Falling Star sect to be almost completely annihilated. As for the lineage that failed in the competition for the position of sect master, because they were not the main target, they were lucky enough to escape the calamity. They fought their way out of the Falling Star Kingdom and took refuge for 10 years. And in these 10 years, the entire Luoxing Kingdom's territory was practically occupied by the Dongfu nation. The Dongfu nation's army in the Luoxing Kingdom had committed massacres, rapes, robberies, all sorts of crimes. In these 10 years, at least tens of millions of Luoxing Kingdom's people had died at the hands of the Dongfu nation. That was a tragic and stirring era, an era that the fallen star planet couldn't bear to look back on. Fortunately, there was a talented young man, Lin Xuan, in the branch of the Luoxing sect that escaped. In 10 years, he had grown to the level where he could compete with the Dongfu sovereign. He led the Luoxing sect back, and with the help of the allies, they finally recaptured their territory and drove the Dongfu nation army out of the Luoxing kingdom's territory. Although the Falling Star sect had been restored and the Falling Star Kingdom had been rebuilt, the hatred between the Falling Star Kingdom and the East Supporting Kingdom was difficult to erase. It had been passed down from generation to generation, and even now, the two countries were still mortal enemies. After that, there were several wars between the two countries, and even wars between sections. However, neither side was able to gain any advantage, and their national strength was greatly damaged. Thus, they gradually restrained themselves. Although the conflict between the two countries had always existed, a war involving millions of troops had not happened for decades. Zishan Ho frowned and said, "A million soldiers? It has been a long time since the East Supporting Kingdom deployed troops on such a large scale. What are the arrangements in the capital?" Mu Feng said, "The young lord has already sent Shenwei General Rong Jingshan as the war marshal to lead millions of troops to deal with this war. However, Marshal Rong only sent 50,000 troops to support Zishan County. He said that the army has to stop the enemy's main force in Chang and County and Nanshan County, so he can only send 50,000 troops to Zishan County. He wants Zishan County to defend its territory and wait for him to destroy the enemy's main force. The Luo Xing kingdom was established by then. The sovereign was the king. However, the sovereign only managed the affairs of the Falling Star sect. Compared to the major affairs of the sect, the affairs of the Luo Xing kingdom were considered small matters. The young lord was the successor of the sovereign. He could be the sovereign's son or disciple. To join the army, the lowest requirement was to be a true martial artist of the 4th level of the martial path. As for the generals, the lowest requirement was to be a master of the 7th level of the martial path. Some of the higher-ranked generals were even at the 8th or 9th level of the martial path. Every additional 10,000 people would significantly increase the strength of the army. Zishan County only had 100,000 troops and 50,000 reinforcements, which was 50,000 less than the enemy. The enemy had 50,000 more troops, not to mention the ordinary soldiers. There were at least 5 more captains of the 9th level of the martial path, 50 more captains of the 8th level of the martial path, and 500 more captains of the 7th level of the martial path. From this, it could be seen that the difference in strength between the two sides was huge. It was extremely difficult for Zishan County to use only 150,000 troops to stop the 200,000 East supporting kingdom's army outside of its territory. Of course, it was not impossible. There were many examples in the history of war where a country with a smaller number won. It was just that they had to defend and not attack. 150,000 troops, although difficult, could be done. Because of this, Rong Jingshan had sent 50,000 troops to Zishan County as reinforcements. If he did not send any troops, it would be impossible for Zishan County's 100,000 troops to stop the enemy, unless Zishan Ho personally went up. However, the level of a country war and a sect war was different. Not only Luo Xing country and Dongfu country, but the neighboring countries also had a war agreement. The country war was limited to the 9th level of the martial path. Martial saints could only plan and command, and could not take action. Once they took action, it meant that a sect war had started. This was much higher level than a country war. It would cause a large number of martial saints to die. Whoever started a sect war first would be the sinner of the sect. Zishan Ho thought for a while and said, "Recruit mercenaries in the county city and let them accumulate military merits. They can use their military merits to exchange for martial arts, herbs, weapons, pills, money, and other things. Recruit as many mercenaries as you can to fight against the East supporting kingdom's army." "Yes, Master Ho." Mu Feng accepted the order and left on the Green Wind Eagle, quickly disappearing from everyone's sight. Zishan Ho stood on the highest floor of the VIP building. Looking down, he said, "The battlefield has always been a place where experts come out. Without high cultivation talent, wanting to stand out and surpass the geniuses? There is only one way: go to the battlefield. Without high martial arts talent, wanting to have outstanding battle strength and be invincible in the same realm? There is only one way: go to the battlefield. Only in the midst of life and death can a true expert be created. The battlefield is the place to temper life and death. There, you may die, but there is also the possibility of becoming stronger. Students, if you want to become stronger and have the courage to face life and death, then go to the battlefield and kill the East supporting dogs." His voice surged and spread in all directions. Everyone heard it clearly. "I want to go to the battlefield and kill the East supporting dogs. I'll go. I'll go too." No matter where it was, there would always be people with hot-blooded hearts. Immediately, many students spoke up and were willing to go to the battlefield. First, to temper themselves. Second, to kill the East supporting dogs. However, although everyone hated the people of East Fu, the battlefield was not a safe place. Not everyone had the courage to face life and death. Most of the students remained silent. "I'm willing to go." Yi Xing took a step forward and said, as a visitor from Earth, Yi Xing did not understand the grudges between the Luoxing kingdom and the East supporting kingdom. However, he believed that the battlefield produced the strongest. His martial arts attainments were superb, his archery attainments were profound, and his super brain had a large number of martial arts secret manuals. However, until now, Yixing had not fully mastered them. His cultivation was sufficient, and his knowledge of martial arts was sufficient. The reason why he had not fully mastered them was because Yixing knew that his battle experience was still too little. Therefore, now that he had the opportunity, he should go to the battlefield to gain experience. He believed that with his strength, as long as he wasn't surrounded by thousands of soldiers, no one would be able to stop him in the Kingdom War. Even if he couldn't defeat them, he could still escape. Therefore, he was still very safe. Unlike ordinary soldiers, who had a 50-50 chance of dying in a battle, it was too dangerous. "I'll go too." Seeing that Yixing wanted to go to the battlefield to sharpen himself, Wei Qingxian also spoke up. She was a very strong person. Since Yixing dared to go, she was naturally not afraid. This was because Yixing and Wei Qingxian, the two first and second-ranked geniuses, were not afraid of death. They were willing to go to the battlefield to sharpen themselves. This made some students who were hesitant feel ashamed. Other geniuses dared to go through dangers just to become stronger. My potential is far from theirs. If I don't dare to go through life and death situations, how can I become stronger in the future? How can I have a higher status in my family? With this thought, there were suddenly a few students who spoke up one after another. They were also willing to go to the battlefield to sharpen themselves. As a result, almost 40% of the students chose to go to the battlefield. As for the teachers in the academy, they were not willing to go. It depended on the allocation of the academy. Zishan County was in a dangerous situation. Most of the teachers had to go to the battlefield. Only a few could stay in the academy. In the end, Zishan Academy decided that Wu Yunshan and Wang Haiqing, the two vice principals, would be the leaders. Among them, 3 ninth-layer teachers, 38th-layer teachers and deacons, and 547 students would participate in the battle. In one day, Zishan Marquis residents recruited more than 10,000 mercenaries. Along with the teachers and students of Zishan Academy, they rushed to the border of Dongshan City. When Yixing and the others arrived at Dongshan City, the Dongfu army had already arrived a day earlier. They were resting in the mountains more than 10 li outside the city. The Dongfu army had a large number of people while the Luoxing army had a small number of people. Naturally, they had to rely on Dongshan City for defense. They did not take the initiative to attack. On the first day, there were more than 20 individual battles between the two sides. On the second day, the Dongfu army still did not launch a large-scale attack. They continued to send people to challenge. Outside Dongshan City, early in the morning, a mighty voice came. "Does your Luoxing kingdom have a warrior of the 7th layer of the martial path who wants to fight with me, Yixisho?" When this voice came, the soldiers in Dongshan City were immediately shocked. It's this Yixisho again. Yesterday, he killed 5 centurions of the 7th layer of the martial path. Damn it, this Yixisho's body refining technique is very high. Even a master of the 8th layer of the martial path may not be able to win against him. Who in the 7th layer of the martial path can be his opponent? Motherf asterisk Kerr, he challenged us in front of the city, but no one on our side accepted the challenge. Not only did it ruin our reputation, it also lowered our morale. If someone had accepted the challenge, they wouldn't have been a match for him. What? In the dignified Luoxing kingdom, there is no martial path master who dares to fight with me, Yixisho. Could it be that they were all cowards? Haha. Chapter 126. Shi Jingxiang laughed maniacally. Haha. Cowardly Luoxing star, you are all cowards. You are all lowly pigs and dogs, stupid and cowardly. You should be trampled by us Dongfu people. Tremble, cowardly Luoxing pig, cower in front of your grandpa Shijing. Ha! Shi Jingxiang was about 5 miles away from Dongshan City. Only a martial sage archer could hit him from such a distance. No one below the martial sage realm could shoot from such a distance. There were large crossbows in Dongshan City with a shooting range of 5 miles. However, it was difficult to hit the target from 5 miles away. The target could dodge easily. Therefore, it was impossible to kill Xianxia directly. Moreover, since the crossbow could kill him, it was not easy to kill him. Xianxia came alone to challenge the warriors of the Luoxing kingdom. Using a crossbow to kill him was just a last resort. The best way was to be able to kill him in a one-on-one fight. Firstly, it would weaken the opponent's strength by killing an expert. Secondly, it would weaken the opponent's morale and increase their own. Lowly Luoxing pig. Cowardly turtle. Further away, the army of Dongfu Kingdom was ready to set off. They shouted loudly. Even though they were 10 miles away, everyone in Dongshan City could hear them. Dongfu dog, don't be so arrogant. I am here to kill you. In Dongshan City, a peak 7th level martial Dao master roared angrily and rushed out of the city. He was Zhou Hongxing, a branch elder of the Zhou family in Prefecture City. He was a mercenary recruited by the Zishan Marquis Mansion. He was about 40 years old and was in his prime. Last night, he rushed to Dongshan City with Yixing and the others. He did not know that Xianxia had killed 5 LV7 centurions of Luoxing Kingdom. Yixing's purpose on the battlefield was to fight. When he heard the shouts outside the city, he wanted to go out and fight, but his residence was rather far from the city gate and he did not have the time to rush over. He was a little slower than Zhou Hongxing. Outside the city, seeing that someone had accepted the challenge, Xianxia's eyes flashed fiercely, and a savage smile appeared on his face. Pa! Another stupid pig or dog from the Luoxing Kingdom has come to seek death. Let me take his head and hang it on your city gate as a lantern. Haha! Zhou Hongxing was furious and shouted, Dong Fu dog, you're courting death. When a martial Dao master used Qin Gong, his speed was faster than a demon horse's sprint. It was just that he couldn't maintain it for a long time. However, for a martial Dao master, a distance of a few miles didn't even take half a quarter of an hour. It wasn't a long time. This consumption was almost negligible compared to the master's vigorous internal strength. Very quickly, Zhou Hongxing had already rushed in front of Xianxia, the treasured sword unsheathed, bringing out a cold light. It went straight for Xianxia's throat. The battle between the two armies was even crueler than the life and death arena. At this moment, any words were superfluous. Both sides only had one goal, and that was to kill the other. Zhou Hongxing's attainments in swordsmanship weren't low. He was fast, accurate, and ruthless. His sword was like a flash of cold light, and it was enough to kill someone with a single strike. However, Xianxia wasn't an ordinary 7th-stage martial Dao master. In his eyes, Zhou Hongxing's sword was somewhat disdainful. Insignificant skill. Xianxia snorted coldly and punched out. Clank! He wore a pair of shiny silver metal gloves on his hands, so he wasn't afraid of weapons. It collided with Zhou Hongxing's treasured sword, making a loud noise. The treasured sword was instantly smashed into a full moon by Xianxia's punch. Zhou Hongxing's arm shook violently, and the treasured sword almost fell out of his hand. He only felt a terrifying force passing through, shaking his internal organs. There was a sweet taste in his throat, and a mouthful of blood gushed out. His body kept retreating. Is that all you've got? Xianxia snorted coldly and strode forward. His fist was like lightning, aiming straight for Zhou Hongxing's head. Zhou Hongxing's eyes revealed a look of horror. He regretted being too impulsive. However, it was too late. Things had already come to this point, and there was no way out. Ja! Zhou Hongxing shouted and stared at Xianxia. He didn't care about Xianxia's punch that was enough to take his life. He stabbed out with his sword, aiming straight for Xianxia's heart. A life for a life. Xianxia had the upper hand. Naturally, he was reluctant to exchange his life for Zhou Hongxing's, even if he was injured. The direction of the punch that was aimed at Zhou Hongxing's head suddenly changed. Clank! Another punch hit the treasured sword. This time, it was a horizontal punch. The sword in Zhou Hongxing's hand instantly flew out of his hand. Xianxia's body moved forward at the same speed. In an instant he was in front of Zhou Hongxing. He almost collided with Zhou Hongxing's body. The closer the distance, the more advantage one's physical strength had. Although Zhou Hongxing's swordsmanship was high, his physical strength was worlds apart from Xianxia's. His face changed greatly and he quickly retreated. At this time, there was no way he could retreat. Xianxia attacked with his elbow and knee. His elbow hit Zhou Hongxing's temple, and his knee hit Zhou Hongxing's heart. Zhou Hongxing blocked the elbow attack, but he was hit by Xianxia's knee. His heart instantly shattered into pieces. Zhou Hongxing's body was sent flying for more than 10 meters. He fell to the ground and stopped moving. He was already dead. Haha. Fallen Star Pig can't even withstand a single blow. Xianxia's figure flashed and appeared beside Zhou Hongxing's body. He took a machete from his waist with his right hand and chopped off Zhou Hongxing's head. He raised his left hand and laughed loudly. In Dongshan City, the people of Fallen Star Country were all furious. Their eyes were spitting fire. On the other hand, the Dongfu Nation's army erupted into thunderous cheers. Can't withstand a single blow. Can't withstand a single blow. The cheers were louder than the previous, shaking heaven and earth. Yixing had just stepped out of the city gate when he saw the scene of Xianxia chopping off Zhou Hongxing's head. He had been in Starland for more than half a year. Although his memories of Earth were still there, they had already entered the depths of his brain. The experience of coming to Starland for more than half a year was Yixing's most profound memory. Without a doubt, Yixing had already assumed his current identity. He was a citizen of Fallen Star Country. Even though he and Zhou Hongxing did not know each other and had never met before, seeing him killed by Dongfu people and his head chopped off, his heart was still burning with rage. However, what happened next made Yixing even angrier. Xianxia untied his belt and took out his ugly lower body part. He urinated on Zhou Hongxing's headless body. Along the way, he put Zhou Hongxing's head in the urine and drenched it completely. Throughout the process, Xianxia was laughing wildly and roaring, "Lowly Fallen Star Pig, you should be used as a urinal by us Dongfu people." Haha. Yixing was furious and shouted, "Dongfu dog, you're courting death." Whoosh! Yixing shouted and used the flying swan technique. His figure leaped 100 meters in the air, his speed as fast as flying. On Dongshan City, countless soldiers and mercenaries looked at Yixing. Although they hated Xianxia to the bone, they were all shocked when they saw that Yixing was just a junior. They all broke out in cold sweat for Yixing. As for those from Zishan Academy, no one was worried for Yixing. They knew that Xianxia was dead for sure. Haha. Another stupid pig from Fallen Star Country has come to die. Brothers of Dongfu, cheer for me. Watch me take the Fallen Star Pig's head. When Xianxia saw that Yixing was only a teenager, he didn't think much of him. He laughed and said, "Centurion Ishi! Centurion Ishi!" The soldiers of Dongfu shouted in unison, cheering for Xianxia. Their voices shook the heavens, their momentum like a landslide. When Yixing was about 100 meters away from Xianxia threw Zhou Hongxing's head at Yixing. Yixing's movements were as fast as lightning. He dodged and was in front of Xianxia in the blink of an eye. Xianxia was very surprised by Yixing's mastery of the body movement technique. However, he still had absolute confidence in his own strength. Die! Xianxia roared and threw a punch. Die! Yixing also let out a roar and threw out a punch. The tiger roared, its momentum overwhelming the sky. Xianxia's expression changed drastically as he felt a huge tiger pouncing at him. Boom! In an instant, the fists of the two men collided with a loud explosion. The clothes on Xianxia's arm were torn apart inch by inch. The bones in his arm were also crushed at the same time. His muscles were torn and blood splattered everywhere. Puff! Xianxia's internal organs were damaged by the terrifying power of the punch. He spat out blood and pieces of his organs as his body was sent flying dozens of feet away. With just one punch, Xianxia had suffered a fatal injury. The cheers of the Dongfu kingdom suddenly stopped. All the soldiers were shocked. Everything in front of them made them feel disbelief. Dongshan City also quieted down at this moment. Except for the teachers and students of Zishan Academy, all the soldiers and mercenaries were shocked. After a moment of shock, the students of Zishan Academy burst into cheers. Only then did the soldiers and mercenaries react and cheer enthusiastically. At this time, Yi Xing's figure flashed and was already in front of Shi Jingxiang. Shi Jingxiang endured the pain in his body and just got up, ready to escape. Meridian severing palm. Yi Xing made a move in an instant and severed all the meridians in Shi Jingxiang's body, turning him into a cripple in an instant. He fell to the ground and gasped for breath. Fallen star pig. Shi Jingxiang was a bit stubborn. His body was crippled and he was dead. Seeing Yi Xing walk over step by step, he was still stubborn. Yi Xing walked in front of Shi Jingxiang and grabbed his hair with his left hand, lifting him up. His right hand took the scimitar from Shi Jingxiang's waist. Yi Xing carried Shi Jingxiang and faced the Dongfu army. He channeled his inner force and roared. His voice whistled through the sky and spread in all directions. Dongfu, dog. This is your fate. After saying that, Yi Xing swung the scimitar in his hand and cut off Shi Jingxiang's neck in an instant. His body fell to the ground and his head was raised high by Yi Xing. Dongfu dog. Dongfu dog. In Dongshan City, the people of Fallen Star Kingdom cheered loudly. In yesterday's battle, Shi Jingxiang killed 5 7th-stage grandmasters from Fallen Star Kingdom. Today, he killed another one. The people of Fallen Star Kingdom were all angry. Now that they could finally vent their anger, they all cheered. Can the monthly votes pass 50 today? Chapter 127. When the two countries faced off, one side rejoiced while the other side was enraged. Compared to the cheers of the Fallen Star country, the Dongfu army was furious. In the martial arts world, the strong were respected and the army respected the strong even more. This meant that the stronger one was, the safer one would be while the more dangerous the enemy would be. Shi Jingxiang was almost invincible among the level 7 martial Dao masters. He was a warrior of the East Fu army. Yesterday, he had killed 5 martial Dao masters of the Falling Stars army. Today, he killed another one. He was highly respected by the soldiers of the East Fu nation. Now, Shi Jingxiang was killed in front of Yi Xing, and his head was raised in Yi Xing's hand. This was Shi Jingxiang's usual action after defeating his opponents. Seeing this, the soldiers of the Dongfu nation naturally took it as a great humiliation and were enraged. Bastard! In the Dongfu army, a martial artist in his 40s was furious. He shouted, "How dare he kill my Dongfu army's warrior? Which warrior is willing to take his head?" Beside him was a large flag with the words, Dongfu, on the right and Luchuan, on the left. This was the Luchuan army of the Dongfu country. This person was called Luchuanji and he was the commander of the Luchuan army. The Falling Star Kingdom and the East Fu Kingdom had teams of 10, 100, a company, 1,000, an army, and 50,000. The position of a general not only required military merit but also great strength. The minimum requirement to be a captain was a level 9 martial Dao master and the commander was a half-step martial sage. Shi Jingxiang was the centurion of the Luchuan Corps. He was the famous centurion. His strength was comparable to an 8th-stage martial ancestor. If he had accumulated enough battle merits and there was an opening for a chiliarch during a war, he could definitely become a chiliarch with his cultivation at the 7th-stage martial path. Even the centurion had died at the hands of Yi Xing. The rest of the centurions naturally did not dare to make a sound. If they went up, wouldn't they be courting death? As for the 8th-level martial scholar, although he was full of confidence in dealing with Yi Xing, there were rules for one-on-one battles between two armies. That was 7th level against 7th level and 8th level against 8th level. They had to fight at the same level. If it was an 8th-stage martial scholar, it would be against the rules. Then, the other party could choose not to fight and directly return to the city. If it was a 9th-stage martial scholar, then it would be a mess. How could they fight? Faced with Rukawaji's words, the Rukawa army was silent, only the sound of angry breathing could be heard. Rukawaji's expression was gloomy. He was furious that no one in the Rukawa Corps dared to step up. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that the strength of the young man was indeed strong. He had seriously injured Shi Jingxiang with one punch. There was no martial Dao master in the Rukawa Corps who could defeat him. Not to mention the Luchuan Corps, even the Purple River, Dong Yen, and West Wind Corps did not have a martial Dao master who could defeat Shou Ishi. Otherwise, how could Shou Ishi kill the 5 centurions of the Falling Stars Corps in succession? It was not that the centurions of the Falling Stars Kingdom were weak, but that Shou Ishi was too strong. In front of the 2 armies, Yi Xing held Shi Jingxiang's head high. Seeing that no one from the other side continued to fight, he immediately reacted. Shi Jingxiang should be the strongest martial Dao master of the other side. With Shi Jingxiang dead, the other side's martial Dao master naturally did not dare to fight. Thinking of this, Yi Xing laughed and said, "The Dongfu nation is so big, with 200,000 troops, and there is no martial Dao master who dares to fight with me? When did the Dongfu dogs become cowards?" Shi Jingxiang had previously ridiculed the Falling Stars Kingdom for being cowards, and now Yi Xing returned the words. Dongfu dogs, cowards? Dongfu dogs, cowards? In Dongshan City, the people of the Falling Stars Kingdom broke out into thunderous cheers, and their morale was high. The army had the advantage in numbers, and the higher the morale of the soldiers, the stronger the morale of the entire army. One person's morale was limited, but when the morale of thousands of people gathered together, it was quite terrifying. An army with high morale would have its combat power increased by at least half, and when morale was low, its combat power would be greatly reduced. A person's combat power increased by half might not be a big deal, but if an army's combat power increased by half, it was absolutely terrifying. This meant that an army of 150,000 people would have the combat power of 200,000 people. Compared to the morale of the people of the Falling Stars Kingdom, the morale of the Dongfu nation's army was much weaker. When they lost, the anger in their hearts was very strong, but anger was not morale. In front of the 2 armies, Yi Xing laughed and threw Shi Jingxiang's head in the direction of the Dongfu nation's army, and said, "Cowards of the Dongfu nation, I know that your martial Dao masters don't dare to come up, so why don't you send your martial Dao grandmasters? It's not that I look down on you, but you are so timid and cowardly. Today, I will challenge any of your 8th level grandmasters, and let you Dongfu dogs experience my dog slaughtering skills." When Yi Xing said this, the soldiers of the Dongfu nation were so angry that they were about to vomit blood. He was looking down on the people of the Dongfu nation. Even the soldiers of the Falling Stars Kingdom were shocked by Yi Xing's words. Although there was only a 1-word difference between Martial Dao Master and Martial Dao Grandmaster, there was a huge gap in strength between the 2, and it was difficult to cross. Shi Jingxiang's strength was almost invincible among the Martial Dao Masters, but he could only compete with an 8th level Grandmaster. After a long battle, he would definitely be defeated. Although Yi Xing easily defeated Shi Jingxiang, and his strength was stronger than an 8th level Grandmaster, he challenged all the Martial Dao Grandmasters in the Dongfu nation's army. The other side would definitely send 8th level Grandmasters, or even 8th level Grandmasters, so how could he have any hope of winning? It was simply courting death. The soldiers of the Falling Stars Kingdom and the mercenaries did not know about Yi Xing's performance in the advanced class assessment of Mount Zishan Academy, but the teachers and students of Mount Zishan Academy knew. They were not worried about Yi Xing at all, and they were all excited. Dog slaughtering. Dog slaughtering. Senior brother Yi, dog slaughtering. The hot-blooded students of Mount Zishan Academy immediately shouted loudly, and finally they shouted in unison, dog slaughtering. The soldiers of the Falling Stars Kingdom and the mercenaries were also affected and shouted in unison. How could they not want to dog slaughtering? It was just that they did not have the strength. Although they still had doubts about Yi Xing's strength, at this moment, Yi Xing said such a thing, so they naturally could not underestimate Yi Xing's power. Bastard! Kill him! He's courting death. The soldiers of the Dongfu nation roared in anger, and their anger soared to the sky. In the Luchuan army, a late 8th level Chiliarch immediately rushed out and asked Luchuan Ji for instructions. Army commander, let me, Luchuan Wei, kill him. Luchuan Wei was in his early 30s, and he was a direct descendant of the Luchuan family. He was 1 generation younger than Luchuan Ji, and was Luchuan Ji's nephew. However, in the army, they had to follow the army's rules. Only when they returned to the family could they call each other uncle and nephew. Lu Chuanji nodded and waved at Yixing and shouted, "Kill him! Use his pig's head as a urinal." Lu Chuanwei responded, turned around and strode towards Yixing. Yixing looked at the fast-approaching Lu Chuanwei, and his eyes slightly narrowed, revealing a dangerous aura. If Yixing used a bow and arrow, he could easily kill a late 8th level grandmaster, but Yixing did not intend to use a bow and arrow. If he suddenly showed too much strength, which martial Dao grandmaster of the Dongfu nation would dare to come forward to die? Every person killed was a merit, especially those with high cultivation. Since Yixing was going to fight, he naturally wanted to kill as many people as possible. "Little thief, tell me your name. I, Lu Chuanwei, am here to kill you." Lu Chuanwei shouted when he was still a kilometer away from Yixing. "Yixing of the Luoxing nation, I am here to kill all the 8th level martial Dao grandmasters of the Dongfu nation." Yixing replied from afar, and his momentum was mighty. "Wah, Luoxing pig die." Lu Chuanwei looked angry, and he was so angry that he shouted. Soon he rushed to 100 feet away from Yixing and slashed down with the 2-finger-wide saber in his hand. Cross slash. It was clearly a slash, but 2 crisscrossing saber chi appeared and slashed towards Yixing. Yixing was wearing a pair of silver metal gloves, which was Shi Jingxiang's weapon, and became Yixing's spoils of war. Roaring Tiger Fist. Yixing punched out, and the sound of a tiger's roar shook the 9 heavens. Yixing's silver body technique had reached the large success stage. His body was tough and powerful, almost invulnerable to swords and spears. Furthermore, he was wearing a high-grade metal glove. Even if his opponent's weapon was a top-grade weapon, Yixing could still fight it head-on. Moreover, his opponent's long saber was only a high-grade weapon. Bang! Yixing's figure turned into a giant tiger in Lu Chuanwei's eyes, and the cross saber chi was instantly shattered by Yixing's punch. Yixing's figure rushed straight forward, as fast as lightning. The power of this punch did not change, and it directly blasted on Lu Chuanwei's narrow saber. Lu Chuanwei was shocked, and his eyes revealed a look of horror. This was the first time he had encountered an opponent with such superb martial arts attainments that he had fallen into an illusion. However, this illusion was incomparably realistic, and it made him feel fear. His aura collapsed, and his strength was greatly reduced. Not to mention that he could not use 11 or 12% of his strength, he could not even use 90 or 100% of his normal strength. How could he block Yixing's unparalleled punch? Clang! In the explosion, Lu Chuanwei's narrow saber was directly blasted open. The saber shook violently, and Lu Chuanwei's palm was ruptured. Blood flowed, and the weapon almost flew out of his hand. His body was shaken by the terrifying power transmitted through the saber and arm, and he was forced to retreat. Yixing's aura was like a rainbow, and he punched again. Like a fierce tiger, he rushed towards Lu Chuanwei, his iron fist like a mountain. Clang, clang, clang. After 3 more explosions, the narrow saber in Lu Chuanwei's hand was almost turned into scrap metal, and Yixing sent it flying. Die! Yixing let out a loud roar and threw out a 5th punch. Lu Chuanwei had no more weapons to block, and could only use his fists to defend. With a crack, the bones in his arm were broken inch by inch, and he was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. Yixing moved like a meteor, and took a saber from his waist. A cold light flashed, and Lu Chuanwei was still retreating when his head flew. Yixing grabbed it and raised it up, shouting, "Killing a grandmaster of the Eastfu nation is as easy as killing a dog." Congratulations to Sunset Flourishing Fall for becoming the 4th leader of this book. 40 monthly votes for today, just 10 more to break 50. Brothers, are there any more votes? Chapter 128. Killing a grandmaster of the Dongfu nation is as easy as slaughtering a dog. Yixing roared with his inner strength, his voice spreading in all directions. Whether it was the army of the Dongfu nation 5 miles ahead or the people of the Luoxing kingdom 5 miles behind, they all heard it clearly. Apart from the teachers and students of the Zishan Academy, the soldiers of the Dongfu nation and the Luoxing kingdom were all shocked. Yixing had actually won. He had killed LV8 Martial Dao Grandmaster from the Dongfu Nation. Moreover, it was a clean victory. As he had said, killing a Grandmaster was as easy as slaughtering a dog. After a moment of shock, the Dongfu Nation broke out into enthusiastic cheers. Dongfu go! Dongfu go! The waves of cheers grew louder and louder. Compared to the cheers for Yi Xing earlier, these cheers were even louder and more passionate. The cheers roused the hearts of the people and boosted the morale of the Luo Xing Kingdom soldiers. The soldiers of the Dongfu Nation felt the same as the people of the Luo Xing Kingdom, but their other emotions were the opposite. Lu Chuanwei had actually been killed by Yi Xing, a rank 7 martial path cultivator. This was beyond the expectations of the Dongfu Nation soldiers. They were shocked and furious at the same time. Especially the Luchuan Legion's Legion commander, Lu Chuanji, who was furious. He had ordered Lu Chuanwei to chop off Yi Xing's head and use it as a urinal, but in the end, it was Yi Xing who had chopped off Lu Chuanwei's head. Although Yi Xing did not use Lu Chuanwei's head as a urinal, that was because Yi Xing disdained to do so. His actions had also caused the Dongfu Nation to lose face and suffer humiliation. Yi Xing's shout, "Killing a Grandmaster of the Dongfu Nation is as easy as slaughtering a dog," was no less humiliating to the Dongfu Nation than Lu Chuanwei's head being used as a urinal. "He's dead. Bastard." Rukawa Ji was infuriated. Rukawa Wei's death was not only a loss of face for the Dongfu army, but also the loss of an elite of the Rukawa family. He roared, "Which chiliarch is willing to go out and bring back this thief's head and corpse? I will tear him into pieces and use his head as a lantern. Bei Shansong is willing to fight and kill this bastard." A peak level 8 martial scholar walked out from the Luchuan army. Bei Shansong was over 40 years old. He was one of the famous chiliarchs of the Luchuan Corps. His strength was definitely top-notch among grandmasters of the same realm. He had defeated grandmasters of the same realm many times. Yi Xing narrowed his eyes when he saw another person coming up. This was exactly what he wanted. In his eyes, every level 8 martial grandmaster was a generous contribution. All the countries nearby had the same way of recording their battle achievements. The higher the cultivation of the enemy killed, the higher the battle achievement. Ordinary soldiers of the 4th or 5th stage of the martial path were worth 1 merit point. Most of the soldiers of the 6th stage of the martial path were decurions and were worth 10 merit points. Most of the masters of the 7th stage of the martial path were centurions and were worth 100 merit points. Most of the masters of the 8th stage of the martial path were thousandmen and were worth 1,000 merit points. Most of the masters of the 9th stage of the martial path were tribunals and were worth 10,000 merit points. Most of the half-step martial sages were legion commanders and were worth 50,000 merit points. This was only the merit points gained from killing enemies. If it was purely based on merit points, it would be different. For example, killing a decurion would give you 10 merit points. However, becoming a decurion would require more than 10 merit points. Instead, it would require 5 times more merit points to become a decurion, which would require 50 merit points. Similarly, becoming a centurion would require 500 merit points. Becoming a chiliarch would require 5,000 merit points. Becoming a tribunus would require 50,000 merit points. Becoming a legion commander would require 250,000 merit points. Yi Xing had already killed a 7th stage of the martial path and an 8th stage of the martial path, earning him a total of 1,100 merit points. Based on merit points alone, it was more than enough to become a centurion. Of course, there was a limit to the number of merit points one could obtain. This was especially true for the temporary mercenaries and the teachers and students of the Zishan Academy. They were not part of the military. Unless they entered the military system and became a real soldier, they would not be able to become a general no matter how many merit points they had. To the cultivators outside the military system, merit points were just a form of honor and a form of value. They could be used to exchange for various treasures in the Zishan Marquis residence. They could also stay and enjoy the same treatment as a general. For example, Yi Xing had 1,100 merit points, which was more than enough for him to become a centurion. Although he could not become a true centurion, he could still obtain the title of a centurion and enjoy the same treatment as a centurion. His status was higher than that of a normal soldier or a decurion. Even after the war was over, as long as he did not exchange his merit points, he could keep his title. It was a great honor, representing how much he had contributed to the country and how much merit he had earned. Bei Shan-song was stronger than a normal 8th stage martial path master, but he was slightly weaker than Ren Xiuwu, who had cultivated the supreme grade origin restoration technique. If Yi Xing could defeat Ren Xiuwu, Bei Shan-song was naturally no match for him. He was defeated in less than 10 moves by Yi Xing. This wasn't the academy tournament, so losing to Yi Xing meant losing their lives. There was a flash of cold light, and the heavily injured Bei Shan-song's head flew into the air. Xianxia's scimitar was very good. It was unusually sharp and could cut through a person's head like cutting vegetables. In the next moment, Yi Xing raised Bei Shan-song's head high and faced the Dongfu army. He shouted again, "Killing a grandmaster of the Dongfu nation is as easy as slaughtering a dog." The void trembled, and the sound waves were like the sea. The sound waves shook the heavens and spread in all directions. Everyone heard it clearly. Another 8th stage martial path master in the Dongfu nation army had fallen at the hands of Yi Xing. In the Dongfu city, cheers shook the sky. The people of the Fallen Star Kingdom were very happy and excited. Now, the soldiers and mercenaries of the Fallen Star Kingdom finally understood that Yi Xing had such terrifying strength. He could even kill a peak 8th stage martial path master. No wonder Yi Xing dared to challenge all the grandmasters of the Dongfu nation. Previously, they thought that Yi Xing was courting death. Now, it seemed that Yi Xing was completely confident that he would win. He had deliberately set up a trap and waited for the martial Dao grandmasters of the Dongfu nation to jump into. With such a heaven-defying martial Dao master, the Dongfu nation would be at a disadvantage in the one-on-one battle between the two armies. The people of the Fallen Star Kingdom were very excited and overjoyed. On the other hand, the soldiers of the Dongfu nation were furious. They had the upper hand in the one-on-one battle yesterday, but because of Yi Xing, they were at a disadvantage again and again. Even Bei Shan-song had died at the hands of Yi Xing. How many Kiliarchs in the Dongfu nation army could go against Yi Xing? However, there would always be someone stronger. Bei Shan-song was not the strongest 8th stage martial path master in the Dongfu nation army. Soon, another person rushed out of the Dongfu nation army and charged at Yi Xing. This time, the martial Dao grandmaster was not from the Luchuan army, but from the Dongxian army. It was Dongxian Mo from the Dongxian family. Dongxian Mo was a peak 8th stage martial path master. His combat strength was a level higher than Bei Shan-song's. Just like Xianxia's position in the Dongfu nation army, Dongxian Mo was the top chiliarch of the 4 armies. Among the 8th stage martial path masters, Dongxian Mo was almost invincible. With Dongxian Mo's appearance, the angry soldiers of the Dongfu nation could not help but regain some of their morale. Many of them shouted Dongxian Mo's name, hoping that he could kill Yi Xing and bring glory to the Dongfu nation. On the Dongshan side, many of the soldiers of the Fallen Star Kingdom looked grim as well. Although Xianxia, who had killed 5 of the Fallen Star Kingdom centurions, was the one who had won the limelight yesterday, Dongxian Mo's reputation was not inferior to Xianxia's. He had killed a chiliarch in the late stage of LV8 from the Luoxing Kingdom. Moreover, he was evenly matched with a LV8 Supreme Power Master in the army of the Luoxing Kingdom who was almost invincible in the same realm. Dongxian Mo did not waste any words when he entered the arena. He immediately killed Yi Xing. At this moment, any words were superfluous. Only death was the real outcome. If he died, all the harsh words he said before would be useless. If he lived, killing the other party was more impactful than any words. Dongxian Mo's mastery of movement techniques was extremely high. His upper-class movement technique had surpassed mastery and was close to perfection. In addition, his movement technique was extremely strange. His entire person faded like a shadow and finally disappeared completely, making others unable to see him at all. No matter how fast one's movement technique was, there should still be a shadow. However, Dongxian Mo did not even have a shadow. This was the Dongxian family's heirloom, Shadow Strike. Shadow Strike was not a martial technique, nor was it a lightness skill. It was not even a cultivation method, but an auxiliary martial skill that could be used in conjunction with any martial skill cultivation. Once it was integrated into the movement technique would become invisible. It was extremely strange and could kill without a trace. Dongxian Mo had killed many martial path masters of the same level just by relying on this movement technique that made his opponent unable to see him. How could one fight when one did not even know where the opponent was? And by the time Dong Xuanma appeared, it would definitely be a fatal strike. By the time they discovered his figure, it would already be too late. Shadow Strike was Dongxian Mo's trump card. Unfortunately, he had met Yixing. Yixing was his nemesis. The moment Dongxian Mo disappeared, Yixing immediately used the Superbrain's scanning function. Once again, Dongxian Mo's figure was discovered by Yixing. However, it was not seen by Yixing's eyes, but by the Superbrain's scanning function. There was a scanning area in the Superbrain that allowed Yixing to see Dongxian Mo's every movement clearly. When Dongxian Mo was hidden, his speed was not particularly fast. To Yixing, that speed was no different from standing still. Yixing snorted inwardly. He did not attack Dongxian Mo directly. Instead, he pretended to be panicked and turned around, exposing his back to the other party. Dongxian Mo was about to circle to Yixing's back for a sneak attack when Yixing's back happened to be facing him. This made Dongxian Mo overjoyed. This was equivalent to giving him a great opportunity. How could Dongxian Mo not seize such a good opportunity? At this moment, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. His figure was like lightning as he charged towards Yixing, arriving behind Yixing in an instant. The black dagger in his hand pierced towards Yixing's heart from the back. Chapter 129. In the blink of an eye, Dong Xuanma's dagger had already pierced into Yixing's back. At this moment, the East Fu Nation soldiers erupted into cheers that shook the 9 heavens. As for the people of Fallen Star Academy, their pupils dilated and their expressions changed. Even the teachers and students of Zishan Academy were shocked and broke out in cold sweat for Yixing. As the target of the attack, Yixing had a sneer on his face. At the moment when Dong Xuanma attacked, Yixing stepped on the Big Dipper. When the dagger pierced through his clothes, Yixing had already turned into an afterimage and dodged to the side. Dong Xuanma's dagger continued to stab forward. It looked like it had pierced into Yixing's body, but it had pierced into the afterimage. Right at this moment, a cold light flashed from the bottom to the top. It was Yixing with his curved saber in hand and slashed upwards. Crash! Blood splattered everywhere. The arm holding the dagger was instantly severed at the wrist. Dong Xuanma's trump card was the shadow assassination technique, which could be used to assassinate in the dark. In fact, his ability to fight head-on was not as good as Beishan Song. And his shadow assassination technique was coincidentally countered by Yixing. Yixing only purposely showed a flaw, and he rushed forward. It was no different from courting death. It was naturally easy for Yixing to sever his wrist. His wrist was severed and his entire palm was gone. That intense pain immediately made Dong Xuanma let out a shrill scream. The soldiers from both sides were dumbfounded at this moment. They saw that Yixing was about to be killed by Dong Xuanma. Unexpectedly, there was such a huge reversal in the blink of an eye. Not only was Yixing not pierced through the heart, he was safe and sound. But Dong Xuanma was seriously injured at this moment. One of his palms had been severed. Even the palm holding the weapon was gone. Dong Xuanma was like a severely injured tiger that had lost its claws and teeth. His eyes were filled with fear and his figure was like lightning, retreating rapidly. Dong Xuanma's figure instantly disappeared in a flash. However, the continuous flow of blood on the ground exposed his escape route. Yixing smiled. He didn't need to judge based on the blood on the ground at all. Dong Xuanma's every move was being scanned by the Superbrain. Whoosh 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 whoosh, Yixing's body was as fast as lightning. In an instant he rushed to a certain place. The curved saber in his hand drew out a saber curtain. In the blink of an eye he had slashed out more than 10 times. No matter what, Dong Xuanma could not understand how Yi Xing was able to capture his figure so accurately when he was in the state of shadow kill. Yi Xing's every strike was aimed at his vital points. This was clearly not something that could be determined just by looking at the blood on the ground. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. Under Yi Xing's swift attacks, Dong Xuanma was in an incomparably miserable state. In the blink of an eye, several vital points were attacked. Not only was his other arm severed, even his head was chopped off by Yi Xing. The headless corpse that was dripping with blood fell to the ground. Dong Xianmo's head was held high in Yi Xing's hand. Killing a grandmaster from the East Fu nation is as easy as killing a dog. Yi Xing's voice once again resounded through the sky and spread in all directions. Great! Slaughtering Dong Fu Go. Luoxing Kingdom is invincible. The people of the Luoxing Kingdom were really excited. Even a powerful level 8 grandmaster like Dong Xuanma had been killed by Yi Xing. This was too unexpected and exciting. When Dong Xuanma attacked, the people of the Luoxing Kingdom hoped that Yi Xing would be undefeated and end the battle in a draw after more than 10 rounds. Who would have thought that Dong Xuanma would be killed by Yi Xing and die so quickly? The morale of the soldiers of the Luoxing nation was like a rainbow, soaring through the clouds. On the other hand, the morale of the soldiers of the East Fu nation was really low. Dong Xuanma's death was a huge blow to the soldiers of the East Fu nation. Among the 4 major legions of the East Fu nation, the 1st Centurion and the 1st Chiliarch had died in the hands of Yi Xing. Yi Xing's actions today had indeed caused the soldiers of the East Fu nation to panic. Who would dare to go up and fight? Unless they sent out a level 9 Grandmaster Major. However, wasn't it shameful for a level 9 Grandmaster to fight a level 7 Grandmaster? Moreover, it was useless to send a level 9 Grandmaster. The initiative was in Yi Xing's hands. He could return to the city without fighting. Cowards of the East Fu nation, do you still have a level 8 Grandmaster who dares to come out and die? Yi Xing waved Dong Xuanma's head and taunted the army of the East Fu nation. A battle between 2 armies was not the time to be merciful. It was much crueler than a life and death battle because it was not about the life and death of one person, but the lives of countless soldiers. It was even about the rise and fall of a nation. If Yi Xing had a personal grudge, Yi Xing would have killed a few of the other party's men and his anger would have mostly dissipated. However, this was not a personal grudge. Yi Xing had no more resentment in his heart, but the 2 armies were fighting and the killing had to continue. Coward! Coward! In East Mountain City, shouts shook the heavens. At this moment, the East Fu nation naturally wanted to trample on them verbally. If they could provoke another level 8 Grandmaster to come out and die, it would be even better. Even if the other party did not send another level 8 Grandmaster, it would still be able to raise the nation's prestige and destroy the enemy's morale. The 4 major legions of the East Fu nation had a total of 200,000 soldiers and 2,000 Chiliarchs at level 8 Grandmaster. However, in the face of Yi Xing's challenge, not a single Chiliarch dared to accept. Even though he was unwilling, he could only endure it and be a coward for now. In the East Fu nation army's central tent. Reporting. Commander-in-Chief, Dongxian Chiliarch Mo also died at the hands of Yi Xing. Now, no one in our army dares to fight this bastard. A communications officer reported to the commander of the 4 major legions, Watanabe Hiroshi. The Watanabe family was the strongest martial arts family in the East Fu nation. There had been 7 successive kings from this family. They had dominated the East Fu nation for 600 to 700 years and were known as the imperial family of the East Fu nation. Watanabe Hiroshi was furious. He slammed the table in front of him and roared, "Kill him!" A youth of about 16 stood up from the side of the tent. "Commander-in-Chief, let me go and kill this bastard." Watanabe Hiroshi looked at the youth and frowned. "Jinshan, you are the genius of the Watanabe family. If anything happens to you, how am I going to explain it to the young master? We don't know the limit of that bastard's strength. Let him be arrogant for a while. When my army comes and sweeps through East Mountain City, he will die no matter how strong he is." "That's right. Jinshan, your body is more important. Why do you have to fight to the death with that bastard?" Jin Shan, you are a genius with a 7-star orange life. You will become a high-ranking martial arts saint in the future. Your body is precious. Your body is more important. The adjutants of the commander-in-chief also spoke. Jin Shan was the genius of the Watanabe family. He was only 16 years old and he was already at the peak of level 8. He had a 7-star orange life, which was 2 stars higher than Zi Shanho's godson's 5-star orange life. As long as he had enough resources, Jin Shan would become a high-ranking martial arts saint in the future. He would be conferred the title of Marquis and his future would be bright. Although they were both from the Watanabe family, Watanabe Hiroshi's status and identity were not as high as Jin Shan's. This was because Jin Shan was the cousin of the young master of the East Fu Nation. As the royal family of the East Fu Nation, the Watanabe family was huge and had many branches. Watanabe Hiroshi was from one of the branches while Jin Shan came from the core of the main branch. He was the grandson of the East Fu Nation's king. Jin Shan was not only talented in cultivation but also in martial arts. He had the ability to challenge those of a higher level. Although he was at the peak of level 8, his strength was not inferior to a level 9 martial arts grandmaster. I came with the army to train myself and increase the speed of breaking through to level 9. Secondly, to kill the falling star pig and show the might of the East Fu Nation. Now, I can use that bastard Yixing's life to boost my will and my prestige. It will also strengthen the morale of the East Fu Nation's army. Jin Shan's face was full of pride. Even though Yixing had killed Dong Xuanma, he was not afraid and was full of confidence. Commander, I want to fight and kill that bastard Yi. Watanabe Hiroshi heard Jin Shan's firm tone and knew that he had made up his mind. He could not stop him and said, "Good, nephew Jin Shan, I will wait for you to take the head of that bastard Yi and return in triumph." Yixing originally thought that no one in the East Fu Nation would dare to fight with him. He wanted to kill the prestige of the East Fu Nation's army and dampen their spirit before he was ready to leave. He did not expect that after a while, someone from the East Fu Nation's army would come to kill him. It was a young man about the same age as him. His white clothes fluttered in the wind and he held a long sword in his hand. He had an elegant demeanor. Following the appearance of this young man in white, the East Fu Nation's army erupted with earth-shattering cheers. Jin Shan's son. Jin Shan's son. Yixing narrowed his sharp eyes. He had killed 3 Kiliarchs of the Dong Fu Nation in a row, including Dong Xuanma, but this Prince Jin Shan still dared to fight. Clearly, his strength was extraordinary. Just like Yixing himself, one could not judge his strength by his cultivation base. Moreover, from the cheers of the East Fu Nation's army, Yixing could tell that this Jin Shan's identity and status were not ordinary. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to reverse the low morale of the East Fu Nation's army and raise the spirits of the East Fu Nation's army. Jin Shan's son was not only famous in the East Fu Nation, but there were also some soldiers in the Luoxing Nation who knew his name. The army naturally had its own intelligence system. It was impossible for someone like Jin Shan not to pay attention to him. In the East Fu Nation city, a Chiliarch shouted, "Attention, young Master Yi. The one coming is the grandson of the East Fu Nation's monarch, a 7-star martial saint. He is also very powerful and is not weaker than an early 9th level martial grandmaster. If you can't beat him, please retreat as soon as possible." Yixing's heart skipped a beat. It turned out that this youth in white was the grandson of the East Fu Nation's monarch. He was really a big shot. It was no wonder that after he killed Lu Chuanwei, Bei Shansong, and Dong Xuanma, the other party still dared to fight. It turned out that not only was his cultivation aptitude outstanding, but he was also a fighting genius. His strength was not weaker than an early 9th level martial grandmaster. He was really a strong opponent. Although Yixing had easily killed Dong Xuanma, that was because he had restrained Dong Xuanma's shadow assassination technique. Without the super brain scan, it would be hard to tell who would win. Therefore, Yixing did not think that his strength had reached the level of a 9th level martial grandmaster. However, Yixing was not afraid of Jin Shan's son. He took down the dragon tendon bow from his shoulder, begging for votes. Chapter 130. With the bow and arrow in hand, Yixing's momentum had reached a whole new level. Originally, when Yixing stood there, he was like a deep abyss with a heavy aura and the aura of a martial arts grandmaster. However, it was heavy enough but not sharp enough. Now that he had the bow and arrow in hand, there was a sharpness that was full of offensive power. He wanted to know how powerful the revolving arrow technique that had reached the acme of perfection was and whether it could kill young Master Jinshan, whose strength was comparable to an early 9th level grandmaster. Taking out a black edge arrow, Yixing did not wait for young Master Jinshan to get close. As long as the other party entered the shooting range, he would take advantage of the distance to kill him. Once he got close, the advantage of the bow and arrow would be gone and Yixing would be at a disadvantage. It would not be easy to pull away. 5 li. 3 li. Young Master Jinshan's speed was like flying as he rushed toward Yixing, getting closer and closer. When the distance between the two was shortened to more than 1 li, which was about 1,200 steps, Yixing shot the first arrow. The arrow flashed like a stream of light and flew 1,000 steps in an instant, going straight for young Master Jinshan's throat. With Yixing's current strength, it was easy for him to pull the dragon tendon bow with the strength of 3 cauldrons into a full moon. Coupled with his vigorous internal strength, the arrow's strength rapidly increased after leaving the bowstring. Every time it shot a distance of dozens of meters, its strength increased by a bit. When the shooting range exceeded 200 meters, its strength reached its peak, producing an extremely sharp sound as it pierced through the air. Above 200 meters and below 600 meters were Yixing's peak strength shooting range. Therefore, when the arrow was shot in front of young Master Jinshan, who was 1,000 steps away, its strength was at its peak. Break! Facing Yixing's arrow, young Master Jinshan's expression was as usual. With a loud shout, he instantly swung the sword in his hand, drawing a cold light. Where the sword light passed, the black edge arrow was instantly cut into 2 pieces by young Master Jinshan. Jinshan Gongzi's body only paused for a moment, but his speed was not greatly affected. He continued to attack Yixing. In a flash, he had already rushed forward nearly 100 meters. Yixing had a rough estimate of Jinshan young master's strength. The power of the arrow just now was definitely not something a peak 8th-stage grandmaster could withstand, but Jinshan young master had easily cut the arrow in half. It could be seen that his strength had indeed exceeded the scope of 8th-stage grandmaster and had reached the level of 9th-stage grandmaster. Yixing narrowed his eyes and instantly took out 3 black edge arrows. If he wanted to kill young Master Jinshan, he would have to go all out. Yixing pulled the dragon tendon bow into a full moon. At the same time, Yixing circulated his inner strength to the maximum according to the revolving arrow technique. In an instant, 3 arrows were released. The 3 black sharp arrows left the bowstring and shot in 3 different directions in an instant. Each of the arrows spun like a spiral. They were like 3 drills that drilled into the void, leaving ripples in the void. The spiraling arrows greatly increased their destructive power. Yixing's revolving arrow technique had reached the acme of perfection to be able to shoot the arrows to such an extent. The 3 arrows were shot in different directions, but their purpose was the same. After drawing 3 distorted trajectories in the void, they all shot toward young Master Jinshan. 1 arrow to the left, 1 to the right, and 1 arrow even reached young Master Jinshan's back. At this time, young Master Jinshan was about 400 meters away from Yixing. At a distance of 800 steps, Yixing shot 3 arrows at the same time. The distorted trajectories and the sharper sound of breaking through the air made young Master Jinshan's face change. At this moment, young Master Jinshan realized that he had underestimated Yixing. Yixing's archery was not only mysterious, but also terrifying to the extent that it was enough to threaten him. However, since he was already on the field, there was no way out. Escaping in front of a godly archer was the most unwise thing to do. The risk of death would be the highest. Therefore, there was only one way to face a godly archer, and that was to close the distance and let the arrow lose its advantage, then kill it. Lotus sword technique. Young Master Jinshan shouted. His body paused in an instant, and his sword was like a lotus, radiating sword light in all directions. Clang, clang, clang. 3 sounds appeared one after another. The first 2 sounds were almost at the same time, while the third sound was slightly slower. Young Master Xianxia's strength was indeed extraordinary, especially his exquisite swordsmanship. This lotus sword technique was like a lotus, and in an instant, it split the 2 arrows on the left and right. Even if the arrow was spinning rapidly like a spiral with amazing destructive power, it was still split in half by young Master Xianxia in an instant, which showed how vigorous his internal strength was. As for the third arrow, because it was shot to the back, it was slightly slower than the first 2 arrows by half a second, and was blocked by young Master Xianxia in a flash. The third arrow was not deflected by him, and he did not intend to deflect the third arrow. Instead, he held his sword horizontally to block it. With a clang, his body retreated more than 100 meters in the air. He wanted to use the power of the third arrow to speed up and get closer to Yixing. It had to be said that this was an excellent method. In an instant, the distance between the two was more than 100 meters. However, young Master Xianxia had miscalculated. The arrow was spinning like a spiral with a terrifying rotational force. If he were to break the arrow with his sword, he would naturally disperse the power of the arrow. However, if he were to only block it, the rotational force would always be there. Young Master Xianxia could block a normal arrow with his sword horizontally, but he could not block a rotating arrow. As soon as the arrow spun, its center of gravity was easily shifted. In the blink of an eye, the black edge arrow passed over the sword, flashed past the edge of the sword, and continued to shoot toward young Master Xianxia. "It's over!" This sudden change startled young Master Xianxia, and he secretly cursed in his heart. Whoosh! Young Master Xianxia's body movement was also very high, and he leaned to the side at the critical moment. However, the arrow was too close to him, and no matter how fast he reacted, he could not avoid it. He was shot in the shoulder, and a sharp pain came. The injury of this arrow was not fatal to young Master Xianxia, but the consequences were enough to kill him. Die! Yixing had already shouted. He pulled the dragon tendon bow into a full moon and shot the 4th arrow. This time, Yixing did not shoot 3 arrows at the same time. All of his strength, essence, qi, and spirit condensed together to shoot the most powerful arrow. The arrow's trajectory was distorted, but the range was very small, almost like a straight line. A straight rotating ripple appeared in the void, formed by the arrow's rapid rotation. This arrow, which contained the power of wind, was extremely fast, and instantly shot to the back of young Master Xianxia's neck. Young Master Xianxia's hair stood on end. Before the arrow reached him, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his neck, as if it was pierced by a sharp light. At the critical moment, young Master Xianxia finished turning around, and the sword in his hand slashed at the arrow. Lotus condensing cut. He shouted loudly. This was the strongest killing move of the lotus sword technique. Normally, the lotus sword technique would scatter the sword light and kill a group of people in all directions. However, this lotus slash gathered all the power into a single slash, and its power was unparalleled. However, the arrow in his shoulder had shot into his bone. When he swung the sword, the pain was incomparable, and it caused a moment of delay in his swinging speed. He did not manage to hit the arrow. The rotating tail of the arrow brushed past the blade, creating a series of sparks, and the arrowhead, at this moment, had already shot into young Master Xianxia's throat. An arrow through the throat. Instant death. Young Master Xianxia's last expression was one of horror and disbelief. He was a dignified 7-star martial saint, a genius of the heavenly mandate realm, and the grandson of the Dongfu nation's emperor. He had a cultivation of the peak of the 8th level and the strength of the early 9th level. He had never expected that he would fall under a 7th-level martial Dao master. Young Master Xianxia did not expect it, the Dongfu nation soldiers did not expect it, and the Luoxing nation soldiers also did not expect it. Everyone was shocked. Killing a grandmaster of the Dongfu nation is as easy as slaughtering a dog. When Yixing cut off young Master Xianxia's head, raised it high, and shouted, both sides recovered from their shock. Young Master Yi is actually a godly archer, no wonder he carried a bow on his back but did not use it. Young Master Ye's archery is so superb, I'm afraid that even a tribunus would not be able to block such an archery. Ha! Young Master Jin Shan is a genius of the Dongfu nation and the grandson of the Dongfu nation's emperor, but he died under young Master Ye's hands. Good. In the East Mountain City, there was a sudden burst of cheers. Everyone was incomparably excited and joyful. In the Dongfu nation's army, there was a deafening roar from Watanabe Bo. Kill! Massacre the East Mountain City for me. Flatten the Purple Mountain County. Capture that bastard Yi alive. I want him to die without a burial place. Because of the long journey, the soldiers were tired, so after arriving at the East Mountain City, the Dongfu nation's army did not rush to attack, but instead set up camp to rest and reorganize, using the method of one-on-one combat to kill some of the generals of the Luoxing nation's army to lower their morale. The first day's results were very good. As long as they persisted for 3 days, Watanabe Bo believed that the morale of the Luoxing nation's army would be at its lowest point, and by then, it would be much easier for him to attack the East Mountain City. However, on the second day, Yixing came and completely reversed the situation. The morale of the Luoxing nation's army was not the least bit low. Instead, it was getting stronger and stronger. On the other hand, the morale of the Dongfu nation's army was getting lower and lower because of the death of their generals. It was not easy for young Master Jin Shan to make a move, and the morale of the Dongfu nation's army was reinvigorated, but in the end, even young Master Jin Shan died, which made the morale of the Dongfu nation suffer a huge blow. It was not the right time to attack, but Commander Watanabe Bo could not suppress the anger in his heart. Young Master Jin Shan was the genius of the Watanabe clan, the grandson of the emperor, and the cousin of the young master. Chapter 131. Yixing naturally wouldn't just stand there like a fool when the Dongfu Kingdom's army was about to launch an attack. Carrying the head of young Master Jin Shan, he sped towards Dongshan City. Young Master Jin Shan's position was not ordinary. If he took back the eastern city mountain, he might be able to shock the soldiers of the East Fu nation. He had to keep him. Although the 4 commanders were half-step martial sages and were much faster than Yixing, by the time they rushed over from 5 li away, Yixing was already within 2 li of Eastern Mountain City. The 4 half-step martial sages stopped when they were 1 kilometer away from Eastern Mountain City. There were large ballistae in Eastern Mountain City. If they continued forward, they would end up as live targets. Unless there was a large army at the border and other soldiers covering for them, they wouldn't dare to get too close to Eastern Mountain City. Yixing returned to Dongshan City without any hindrance. The city gates were immediately closed. The city walls of Dongshan City were 100 meters high. Even a 9th grade grandmaster would find it difficult to rush up with Qinggong. Young Master Yi. Good job, young Master Yi. As soon as Yixing returned to the city, he was warmly welcomed by the soldiers in the city. Everyone who saw him took the initiative to greet him. Today, Yixing had killed 5 experts from the Dongfu country. 1 was a 7th layer grandmaster, and 4 were 8th layer grandmasters. Among them was young Master Jin Shan, a genius of the Dongfu country's royal family. It could be said that the people of the Fallen Star Kingdom had vented their anger. In Dongshan City, which Fallen Star citizen was not happy. No matter how much Wang Haiqing hated Yixing, he was in a good mood because of the Dongfu nation's loss in the Kingdom War. After today's battle, Yixing could be considered famous in Eastern Mountain City. There was no one who didn't respect him. Yixing had killed 5 people in a row and had consumed a lot of his inner strength, especially killing young Master Jin Shan. Those few arrows had not only consumed his inner strength, but also his essence, energy, and spirit. Now that he had used his Qinggong to rush back to Eastern Mountain City, he was not far from collapsing from his inner strength. After handing over the head of young Master Jin Shan to the guards of Dongshan City, Yixing returned to his residence, swallowed a star-accumulating pill, and began to meditate to quickly restore his internal strength. Even if a great battle was about to break out, Yixing had to recover his inner strength first. Only then would he have the strength to kill the enemy. Otherwise, it would be useless even if he rushed forward with a weak body. Yi Xing had killed 5 experts in a row. Everyone in Dongshan City knew that he had expended a lot of energy, so naturally, no one disturbed him. While Yi Xing was meditating, the Dongfu nation's 200,000-strong army had already surrounded Dongshan City. Dongxian, Luchuan, West Wind, and Zichuan, under the lead of their commanders, surrounded the east, south, west, and north of Dongshan City respectively. Then, the bugle horn sounded and the drums thundered as they launched their attack. Tens of thousands of soldiers were densely packed, stretching for miles as far as the eye could see. They were like a black cloud pressing down. At the very front were the shield-bearers. They held huge shields and walked side by side. Behind each group of shield-bearers was a row of archers. They were approaching Eastern Mountain City. When the army of the Dongfu Kingdom was within 4 miles of Dongshan City, the large crossbows on the city walls were fired. The huge crossbow bolts were 30 feet long and looked like huge spears. In an instant they shot out a few miles. The shields were unable to block the crossbow bolts at all and were instantly shattered into pieces. The powerful penetrating force pierced through 10 soldiers in a row before it was exhausted. On each side of the city walls, there were dozens of large crossbows, and every time they were fired, hundreds of Dongfu army soldiers would lose their lives. However, compared to the tens of thousands of soldiers, these casualties were nothing. The lowest cultivation among the soldiers was a level 4 martial artist. Every one of them moved at lightning speed. After only 6 waves of crossbows, the Dongfu Kingdom's army lost nearly 1,000 men. They were now within 500 steps of Dongshan City. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At this point, the archers from both sides began to shoot. The archers from the Dongfu Kingdom hid behind the shield-bearers and were protected by the shield-bearers. Most of the arrows shot from the Dongshan City were blocked by the shields. Only the openings in the formation where the large crossbows had broken through had suffered heavy casualties due to the loss of their shields. In the East Mountain City, the people of the Fallen Star Kingdom would either rely on the city walls for defense or hide behind bunkers. Hence, very few of them were directly hit by the arrows. However, the arrows shot by the Dongfu soldiers were all burning fire arrows. Even though most of the buildings in the city were fireproof, there were still some places that were not protected and were set ablaze. Smoke rose from all directions. The battle had been quite intense since the beginning. When the Dongfu Kingdom's army was 100 meters away from the city walls, there were suddenly flying claws that shot out, grabbing the top of the city walls. The city walls were 100 meters high and the flying claws were about 70 meters high. Below them, there were ropes. The soldiers only needed to use qinggong to walk to the end of the ropes, and they would be less than 10 feet away from the city walls. They could then jump up. Once the flying claws were grabbed, a large number of soldiers flew up. The shield-bearers were still at the front as they rushed up the city walls. At this time, the shields could only block the front and could not block the arrows from the left and right. The casualties of the Dongfu Kingdom soldiers began to increase. Defending a city naturally had its own advantages. Attacking a city naturally had to pay a higher price. At this moment, the battle situation in all 4 directions of the Dongshan City was very intense. Kill! Countless people shouted and the sound of killing shook the sky. Below the city walls, there were piles of corpses and rivers of blood. One by one, the soldiers of the Dongfu Kingdom rushed up the ropes. However, they were shot by the arrows and fell down, either dead or injured. However, when the number of soldiers increased, there would always be people who broke through the arrows and rushed up the city walls. This was especially true for generals such as centurions, chiliarchs, and captains. They were at least at the level of martial Dao masters and were very powerful. Ordinary archers were not as powerful as them. They were almost unstoppable, and very few of them were killed by arrows. When the Dongfu Kingdom soldiers rushed up the city walls, the 2 sides began to fight. The most intense and cruel battle had truly begun. In such a battle, the lives of soldiers were like ants. Regardless of the enemy's side, there were people constantly falling down. Even the generals of both sides had casualties. The four walls were all dyed red with blood. When Yi Xing's spirit and inner strength had fully recovered, it was already more than 2 hours later. The battle had reached its climax. The four walls had already been attacked by the Dong Fu Kingdom's army. Behind them, more and more Dong Fu Kingdom soldiers were climbing up the ropes. The situation was very grim. If not for the morale of the Luo Xing Kingdom soldiers and their bravery, the Dong Fu Kingdom soldiers would have already broken through one of the walls. Although the morale of the Luo Xing Kingdom soldiers was high, the morale of the Dong Fu Kingdom soldiers was not very low. When the real battle began, the morale of the Dong Fu Kingdom soldiers had recovered a lot. Hence, the Dong Fu Kingdom soldiers were having a hard time defending. Yi Xing came out of his room and jumped onto the roof. He looked into the distance and scanned the four walls. He found that the west and north sides were still fine. Currently, the Luo Xing Kingdom still had the upper hand. However, the east and south sides were very grim. Especially the south side, where the temporarily recruited mercenaries and Zishan Academy's teachers and students were defending. They only had about 10,000 people. Other than that, the Dongshan City's army had only sent 20,000 people to help. There were only 30,000 people in total. The Luchuan army that attacked the South City had 50,000 soldiers. Moreover, the army commander, Luchuan Ji, had taken the lead and killed many Luo Xing Kingdom soldiers. In the end, Vice Principal Wu Yunshan had to intervene to stop him. Vice Principal Wang Haiqing blocked the vice commander of the Luchuan Corps. Although he blocked the two half-step martial sages, the other side had a large number of martial path LV7, LV8, and LV9 experts. They outnumbered the Luo Xing Kingdom and naturally had the upper hand. Yi Xing took a look and saw many corpses of the Zishan Academy students. They were all wearing the Academy's uniform and could be easily distinguished. As a student of the Zishan Academy, Yi Xing's heart burned with anger when he saw the corpses of his classmates. He immediately took the dragon tendon bow and rushed towards the South City. Although the East City situation was not good, it was still better than the South City. If the South City was lost, the Luchuan army would enter the city and attack with the other armies. It would be easy to break through one side. Once one side was lost, it would be difficult to defend the city. Hence, the Luchuan army must not be allowed to take down the South City. Kill. Slaughter the East Mountain City. Slaughter the Luo Xing pigs. In the South City, a chiliarch of the Luchuan army was holding a long spear in his hand. He was stabbing a mercenary of the 7th Martial Path to death as he shouted excitedly. Around him, there were corpses all over the ground. They were all from the Luo Xing Kingdom. His eyes were bloodshot. He swept his long spear and was about to kill the soldiers of the Luo Xing Kingdom in front of him. At this moment, an arrow burst out from afar. The arrow spun in the air and its trajectory was distorted. Although the martial Dao master blocked the arrow with his spear, his defense missed. The arrow instantly pierced the throat of the 8th martial Dao master, killing him instantly. Yi Xing's figure quickly appeared in the distance. He floated on the roof and quickly knocked an arrow and drew his bow. The arrow pierced through the air. In the distance, another general of the East Fu Kingdom was shot in the throat. It was a centurion of the 7th martial path. Under Yi Xing's arrow, he could not resist at all. Whoosh! Yi Xing had been walking on the roof. His eyes swept across the distance. The ordinary soldiers of the East Fu Kingdom were all ignored by Yi Xing. He searched for the generals of the centurions and chiliarchs. He killed one when he saw one. Whether it was on the Luo Xing Kingdom's side or the East Fu Kingdom's side, there was no other archer with superb archery skills like Yi Xing. The 8th martial Dao master could not resist his arrows. As the centurions and chiliarchs of the Luchuan army were killed one by Yi Xing, the situation in the South City began to improve. In a martial artist army, the strength of the generals was very strong. Compared to ordinary soldiers, a martial Dao master was a centurion and could fight 100 men. A martial Dao master was a chiliarch and could fight 1,000 men. Yi Xing killed a centurion, which was equivalent to killing 100 ordinary soldiers. Killing a chiliarch was equivalent to killing 1,000 ordinary soldiers. In 15 minutes, Yi Xing had killed 21 centurions and 5 chiliarchs. Naturally, the strength of the Luchuan army was greatly reduced. Chapter 132. It was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to defend against an arrow in the dark. Yi Xing shot arrows from afar. The arrows were like flowing light, extremely fast. It was impossible for the generals of the Dongfu nation to guard against them. With every arrow, a centurion or chiliarch of the Luchuan army would die. None of them missed their target. After he killed dozens of centurions and chiliarchs, he locked onto a new target. A captain of 10,000 men. A captain was a 9th-level grandmaster. Even if it was an early-stage 9th-level grandmaster, it would not be easy for Yi Xing to kill him. The captain he had locked onto was a mid-stage 9th-level grandmaster. If it was a one-on-one fight, even if there was enough distance, Yi Xing would not be able to kill him with his bow and arrow. However, it was not a one-on-one fight now. This person was in a fierce battle with a mid-stage 9th-level grandmaster from the Purple Mountain Academy. The two of them were similar in strength. Any external interference would affect the balance between the two. Yi Xing was 1,000 steps away. He took out 3 arrows and knocked them on his bow. Before the battle, Yi Xing had prepared a lot of arrows. He still had a lot of them. Bush, bush, bush. The 3 arrows left the bowstring. In an instant, they drew a distorted trajectory in the void. They shot toward the mid-stage 9th-level captain of the Luchuan army. The arrows spun, carrying astonishing destructive power as they attacked from different directions. Luchuan Yi was at a critical moment in the battle with his opponent. Suddenly, his heart tightened for no reason. A fatal danger shrouded his heart. He wanted to dodge, but his opponent had also noticed his danger. He suddenly sped up his attack. The sword shadows were endless, making it difficult for him to be distracted. "Ha!" Luchuan Yi shouted. At the critical moment of life and death, the vigorous inner strength in his body exploded. The treasured sword in his hand slashed out endless sword shadows to defend against his opponent's attack. At the same time, his body twisted like a snake. He used an extremely strange movement technique and dodged to the side with a twist. Bush, bush. This movement technique was indeed extraordinary. Under such a crisis, Luchuan Yi actually dodged the attack of 2 arrows. However, Yi Xing didn't just shoot 2 arrows. He shot 3. Bush. The 3rd arrow pierced Rukawa Ye's back, penetrating more than a foot. The arrowhead pierced through his heart. The heart was the most vital part of the body. Even a 9th-stage grandmaster would die instantly from such an injury. Luchuan Yi screamed and fell to the ground. His body twitched and soon he died. Yi Xing was overjoyed. Killing a major general meant that the Starfall Kingdom now had a 9th-grade grandmaster, which would have a huge impact on the battle. In addition to the centurions and chiliarchs killed by Yi Xing, the Luchuan Legion's high-end combat power was no longer comparable to the Luoxin kingdoms. Although the Luchuan Legion had more ordinary soldiers, there was a limit to it and they no longer had the advantage. The situation in the South City had been resolved. The balance of strength was tilting towards the Luoxin kingdom. In addition, Yi Xing continued to shoot arrows from the side, killing the enemy's generals. It would not take long for the Luchuan Legion to be completely defeated. Luchuan Ye's scream before his death attracted the attention of most of the Luchuan Legion's sergeants. The 2 half-step Martial Sage Legion commanders noticed that the Luchuan Legion's advantage was gone. Instead, the Luoxin kingdom began to gain the upper hand. Previously, the high-end combat power of the Luchuan Legion had the advantage in numbers. However, the extra centurions and chiliarchs were all gone. On the other hand, the Luoxin kingdom's side had a few centurions and chiliarchs and even a 9th-grade martial Dao grandmaster. A 9th-stage Zongshi master would be able to take on tens of thousands of enemies. Killing ordinary soldiers would be as easy as slaughtering dogs. Even killing centurions and chiliarchs would be a piece of cake for them. This would turn the tide of the battle very quickly. At this moment, in the distance of the city, another arrow burst out. A mournful scream rang out. A chiliarch of the Luchuan Legion who was in the middle of a fierce battle was instantly killed by an arrow. Legion Commander Lu Chuanji and Vice Legion Commander Lu Chuanzhao's attention shifted in the direction of the arrow and immediately found Yi Xing's figure. The two finally understood that it was Yi Xing who was shooting arrows. An ordinary archer's arrows could hardly threaten a martial Dao master or a martial Dao grandmaster, let alone a martial Dao grandmaster. However, Yi Xing was different. Yi Xing's attainments in archery were very high. Every arrow he shot was a fatal threat to the generals of the Luchuan Legion. Lu Chuanji and Lu Chuanzhao knew very well that if Yi Xing continued to shoot arrows from the side, they were afraid that the generals of the Luchuan Legion would be shot to death. Even the generals of the Luchuan Legion would not be able to survive. If they did not get rid of Yi Xing, the Luchuan Legion would definitely lose, and it would be a crushing defeat. Lu Chuanji hated Yi Xing to the bone. Now that he saw Yi Xing turning the tide of the battle, he was furious. He immediately attacked Wu Yunshan, forcing him to retreat. Then he pounced on Yi Xing. How could Wu Yunshan allow Lu Chuanji to disturb Yi Xing? He let Yi Xing shoot arrows from the side. The effect was no less than having a half-step martial sage. No, the effect was greater than having a half-step martial sage. As a godly archer, the advantage he had in a battle was incomparable. Yi Xing could kill enemies from 1,000 steps away. Could a half-step martial sage do the same? In terms of strength, Yi Xing was naturally not comparable to a half-step martial sage. However, in terms of killing efficiency, he was better than a half-step martial sage. Wu Yunshan launched a desperate attack on Lu Chuanji, preventing him from escaping. Although Lu Chuanji was furious, he did not dare to underestimate a half-step martial sage opponent. Especially when his opponent was fighting with his life on the line, it was difficult for him to be distracted. For a moment, Lu Chuanji could only block Wu Yunshan's attacks with all his strength. How could he care about Yi Xing? Old Xiao, go and kill that little bastard. Lu Chuanji could not escape and could only send a message to Lu Chuanzhao. Lu Chuanzhao understood and attacked Wang Haiqing a few times. Then he pounced on Yi Xing in the distance. Wang Haiqing was not like Wu Yunshan. When he saw that Lu Chuanzhao was going to kill Yi Xing, he did not resist. After Lu Chuanzhao escaped, he did not continue to attack. Instead, he attacked one of the captains of the Luchuan Legion. The situation was clear. As long as Wang Haiqing killed one of the captains, the Luchuan Legion would be defeated regardless of whether Yi Xing was dead or alive. When Yi Xing saw that Wang Haiqing did not use all his strength to stop Lu Chuanzhao, he frowned and immediately used the Flying Swan skill to escape into the city. Originally, he wanted to kill all the generals of the Luchuan Legion and wipe them out. However, when Lu Chuanzhao attacked, he had no choice but to retreat. With the superb Flying Swan skill and the wind force, Yi Xing's speed was not much slower than Lu Chuanzhao's. The distance between the two of them was a few hundred meters. Lu Chuanzhao chased after Yi Xing for a while. He did not dare to enter East Mountain City alone as he was afraid that he would not be able to escape. He gave up on chasing after Yi Xing and returned to the battlefield in South City. When he returned, Wang Haiqing had already killed one of the captains of the Luchuan Legion. The Luoxing Kingdom's side had another empty 9th grade grandmaster. Lu Chuanzhao, who had returned, was stopped by Wang Haiqing. The two extra 9th grade grandmasters rampaged through the Luchuan Legion, slaughtering their way to defeat the Legion. Lu Chuanji saw that the Luchuan Legion had countless casualties and had no choice but to order a retreat. If they were too late, they would be heavily surrounded and unable to escape. During the retreat, many soldiers of the Luchuan Legion were killed. The ground was littered with corpses and blood flowed like a river. When they had completely retreated 5 miles away from East Mountain City, there were only slightly more than 30,000 soldiers left from the 50,000-strong army. The loss of their generals was even greater, almost half of them had perished. After Yi Xing escaped into the city, he went straight to the east side of the city. The east side of the city faced the Dongfu Kingdom's military camp and was attacked by the Dongxian Legion. The battle was the most ferocious. As the East Mountain City's garrison had transferred 20,000 men to assist the south side of the city, there were only 40,000 men defending the south and north side of the city. The north side was attacked by the Sichuan Legion. The attack was not very intense, so the situation was still manageable. The east side of the city was the Dongfu Kingdom's main attack direction. Dongxuan's combat power was also very strong, so it was naturally difficult for 40,000 men to defend the city. The south side of the city was more dangerous than the east side. Yi Xing had already turned the situation around. Now that Yi Xing had come to the east side of the city, it was only natural that the situation there would change quickly. Dongxuan's generals were shot dead by Yi Xing one after another. When the south side soldiers had completely repelled the Luchuan Legion and sent a portion of them to assist the east side, the situation of the battle was instantly reversed. The Dongxian Legion was defeated, even worse than the Luchuan Legion in the south. As the Dongfu Kingdom's army retreated from the east and south side of the city, the north and west side of the city received the news and quickly retreated as well. The first siege battle lasted for half a day before it finally ended. After counting the casualties, the Luoxing Kingdom's side was victorious, with about 10,000 casualties. The Dongfu Kingdom's army, on the other hand, had more than 40,000 casualties. 90% of them had fallen on the battlefield of the east and south side of the city. After this battle, the Dongfu Kingdom's advantage was gone. In war, casualties were as simple as drinking tea. As long as there was a war, there would be casualties regardless of the outcome. This was the norm. The heroes who died in the war were compensated by the country to their families. After the war, there were not many who were grieving. Most of them were immersed in the joy of victory and the joy of being alive. Zishan Academy's student, Yi Xing, killed 70 people, including 1 9th-level Grandmaster, 24 8th-level Grandmasters, and 45 7th-level Grandmasters. Awarded 38,500 points of military merit, awarded the title of Chiliarch, and awarded the 7th-level Kiliarcha's Honor Medal. After the battle, it was naturally time to discuss the merits and rewards. Yi Xing deserved to be called the #1 person in this battle. Killing a Chiliarch awarded 1,000 points of military merit, but the title of Chiliarch required 5,000 points of military merit. Yi Xing's military merit did not meet the requirement of 50,000 points, so his title was only Chiliarch. However, there were different ranks for Kiliarchs according to their military exploits. Between 5,000 and 10,000 points of military merit was a first-level Chiliarch. Between 10,000 and 15,000 points of military merit was a second-level Chiliarch. So on and so forth. Every 5,000 points of military merit was a higher rank. The highest rank was 9th level. If one's military merit reached 50,000 points, they would no longer be a 10th-level Chiliarch. Instead, they would be awarded the title of Chiliarch. In the first battle, Yi Xing had obtained the title of Chiliarch. Moreover, it was a 7th-level Chiliarch. Seeing that Yi Xing had obtained the 7th-level Kiliarcha's Honor Medal, no one was not envious. Begging for monthly votes. There's not much on the battlefield, but the climax will come soon. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.